Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reaction with your host, Bryan. It's the end of the week, Saturday. We're going to check out a full album here, going through it track by track, seeing what each track is doing in isolation, and it's part of the larger artwork. A long while ago, we checked out Hawaii Part 2 by the artist Miracle Musical, which was a side project of Joe Hawley's. Joe Hawley was originally a part of Tally Hall, which is what we're going to be looking at today. Their 2005 album, Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum. The thing here is that on Miracle Musical, most of Tally Hall's members were featured in places of that album. So it's possible I've already heard some of what is going to be the sound of this, but it could also be that Miracle Musical had a very different sonic identity than what we're going to explore today in Tally Hall. Now this album's kind of short, 49 minutes, not quite the 30-minute area that some albums can be, but we haven't broken an hour either. But there's 15 tracks. That is a lot of tracks for such a short time, and I see that there are quite a few shorter songs on here in the 2-minute range. Lots in the 1-minute range. There's even a 13-second song in here, which, what's that going to be about? Let's kick this off, though, with the track Good Day, and see how Tally Hall is going to introduce us to this album.
I like to say hello and welcome you. Good day, that is my name. Come here and sit down, I'm so glad you even really truly came. We can even go and take a walk or something like that, or something like that. But first I need to introduce my what and introduce my when. Its name I like to call, it likes to say it's nothing. It lives and breathes and it insists that it is something. It never liked to speak or run or walk or sleep or eat. It even thought that everybody tried to take its seat.
So it feels like we're working in groups of 4, but there's 10 beats total, which is a little awkward.
Give it a few tries. Nothing goes right in its time.
Oh, actually 13, not 10.
Bad dreams, wonder about no things, circles and spirals in mind.
This is 4 bars of 4, though. There's so much variety.
This song is not about to know or yes or why. What's really truly what I say is not about a little sigh. So come along, I think I'm done, I think we're done, yes this is done. What's truly that I think about it and it thinks about to done. Let us see. Looking through glass eyes, give it a few tries. Nothing goes right in its time. Kill all its bad dreams, wonder about no things, circles and spirals in mind. I thought you knew, I knew, but why and by and why and by and by. I wanted you to know, I thought you knew, but why and by and why.
I'll let it keep going. I'm still formulating thoughts anyways.
Here's that part again where everything's more than it should be, and greener seems to fall beneath your feet. Seconds tick like boulders whenever you don't call. Does it seem like that where you are? Wherever it is you are, does it seem like that where you are? Yeah, 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 yeah. Time for time together.
This is so mid-2000s though. This part in particular, I could really see in like an MTV young adult series.
I got this notch on my belt, 'cause in my plans you were all for me. Yeah, but now it seems that you just rather leave. Wherever you go is breaking me slowly. Don't leave it alone.
Okay, I got a soft spot for this track.
You sound so much further on the phone. You fit just right next to me. But there's always a reason why it can't be.
The tension into more tension into the soft release. Classic.
Telephones make you seem miles away from home. All alone, I get a little meaner.
Oh.
I leave a message at
Playful.
your tone, and
Very
miles
playful.
away from home, you get a little cleaner of me. And I find a little greener shade of envy. Wherever you go is breaking me slowly. Don't
Yes,
leave
dude.
it alone. Don't leave it alone. You sound so much further.
The alternative rock pop emo angle, especially
You fit just right
on the vocal harmony coming into this.
But there's
Solid.
always a reason why it can't be. Wherever you are is breaking my heart. Don't
Yes.
leave it
Very red jumpsuit apparatus.
alone. You fit just right next to me.
We're gonna have another transition? No, okay. Okay. Wow. This is a crazy way to kick off an album. First of all, these two tracks really couldn't be further apart as far as difference. I mean, they're both in the realm of a more mainstream style of rock music, with Good Day kind of having that, I don't know if there's a genre name for it. It's an artsy kind of rock, but I don't know if I'd call it art rock. I kind of think of like We Might Be Giants, kind of with that, I don't know, like a geekiness to it. It's not a word I think I would describe much today, but at the beginning of the 2000s, I mean, that was a big time for geeks. They were showing up in more positive ways in sitcoms, television, films, but there's also shows like, was it Fuse or MTV? One of them had Beat the Geeks, which had people who were just incredibly knowledgeable about specific areas of pop culture, and you would have to have more knowledge than him. Or so, I don't remember what the game show was about. Something along those lines, though. And I think like this was around the time that being a geek was not necessarily cool, but slipping into that. This was sort of a pre-Marvel, pre-superheroes are cool kind of thing. But it was certainly right on the cusp of that too. Because 2005 here, we had already started some of the Marvel movies, I believe, and they were breaking into the pop culture zeitgeist. So I don't know, I'm kind of deviating here, but the first track, it has a very specific flair to it. I can think of a few bands who I visualize in that same type of music. Again, We Might Be Giants, I think, is the most clear parallel there. But for some reason, I always think of like, I mean, maybe it's also, oh, no. I don't know. I think of like a bunch of guys that just look super nerdy, but they know how to make fun music. But it is like a nerdy kind of fun, not like a loose and dance kind of fun. I don't know if that makes any sense. But then Greener is like a very straightforward pop emo track that feels like Hawthorne Heights could have written 70% of it. It does veer off into some interesting, more rock opera areas. It picks up a few cues from Queen, some of their more slower ballad ideas. That's an interesting parallel there too. But honestly, these two tracks are so different. But there's also something that holds them all together too. All of the different parts of both of these tracks. It's incredibly theatric. There is from what I'm getting from it, there's a visual vision to this music. It is designed to embody and showcase what to me feels like scenes. I don't always have visual analogies or visual thoughts when I listen to music. Quite frequently, I get more of an emotional journey. I feel feelings, I feel emotions when I listen to parts, and then I try to pair that to storytelling. Frequently, I will pair that to something visual, as I do tend to watch more films than I do read books. But I don't normally see things directly when I listen to music. But with these two tracks, I do. And it's not necessarily film I think of, it's the stage. There's a theatricality to all of this. And there is a very strong musical theater element to Good Day that doesn't show up as much in Greener, but it does feel like they're trying to use popular sounds of the time in order to create this idea of a play. I don't think that's completely accurate, but definitely something theatric and visual in mind. I find that to be really interesting and does kind of line up with Miracle Musical as well. I don't know how much Joe has as far as influence on what Tally Hall was doing here versus what he would do with Musical Miracle, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years later, something like that. But I can certainly feel a lot of that theatrical element that embodied almost the entirety of Miracle Musical, presenting itself here in a variety of parts. I do want to start with A Good Day, though, speaking about things a little bit more directly and concisely. I didn't really get this one. And I think a lot of that is because it is throwing everything at the wall and not even seeing what sticks, just like keeping everything. It is all over the place. We have Queen-style piano ballads. We have vocal harmonies. We have musical theater chord progressions. We have rock style ideas. We have pop style ideas. We have electronic concepts. We have lots of samples in places too, designed to push sort of a narrative. There was one section that is incredibly striking still in my mind. Just a series of electronic hums and buzzes and old tube TVs being turned on, and a series of all these ideas as if I was being bombarded by media at this time. And I believe there was some spoken word at the moment too, or maybe something a bit sing-songy, not necessarily sung traditionally, but having a little bit of a speaking cadence to it that felt like I was being spoken to from multiple television sets and radios. Again, it's a very visual idea here, not necessarily an emotive connection to these sounds, but they immediately put my mind into seeing the reflection of what's happening. I don't know what to make of this opening track. And the smorgasbord of sounds, styles, and genres here may be something akin to the television, the concept of channel surfing. But there's other oddities that happen here as well. The verse, if we can call it a verse, I'm not really sure what the structure is of this track, but we do continue to return to it at least, I think we hear it at least 3 times. It's a 13-beat phrase, setting up of 4 beats in a bar. We get 3 of those at least. Pretty straightforward. Naturally, we assume there's going to be a 4th bar because 4 bars of 4 beats is the standard for a lot of Western music. And then we only get 1 beat, and then we start it back up. And it is like tripping over your feet. It's like missing that stair. You thought you had cleared it, and you didn't, and now you're tripping going up the stairs, and it's caught you off guard. Yeah, you can walk upstairs. You might have even walked up these particular stairs many times in your life, and for whatever reason, one of them just tripped you up. And that's what I felt like there. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on here. 13 is an interesting number in and of itself. Just within pop culture in general, 13 is kind of an unlucky number. The prime, but in the realm of music, it doesn't really fit much of anything. If you're working in bars of 3, well, you're still going to have 1 beat left over. If you're working in groups of 4, you're going to have 1 beat left over. If you're working in 5, you got a 5-5-3, which you can certainly play around with because 5s can be broken up into 3 and 2. So 3 is already sort of a part of this. But it doesn't work really well. You bump that up to 6, you're left again with 1 extra beat. 13 is just a really awkward number to work with. So, and they don't do anything to try to alleviate that. In fact, I think they lean into it more than anything, purposefully setting up these groups of 4 so that you will stumble on this one rogue beat that's extending this phrase. It even took me a while to figure out where 1 was, because if you don't catch 1 at the beginning of this section, the 1 extra beat feels like a 1, but then you also get a 1 after that as we're starting the phrase over, and then the vocals come in on beat 2, and that also makes that feel like a 1 also. So you have 3 beats back to back that all have some sort of emphasis on them. It is dizzying until you get a hang of it. Not quite sure what to read into that, but it is something that consistently tripped me up throughout that track. There is also a really cool concept in there, though, of canon / counterpoint. We kind of got both of them. Counterpoint is when you have multiple melodies, their own unique melodies happening simultaneously. And there was one specific moment when instead of harmonizing all 3 vocals in a section, we got the first vocalist, and then after they said a couple of words, a second vocalist came in. And they repeated, from what I could tell, at least the first couple of words, which makes me think it's a canon. And a little bit after that, a third vocal came in with the first word. I was like, okay, we definitely have a canon here. Maybe they're not exactly perfect, but it's a canon. But then I noticed the third vocalist was just doing quarter notes, whereas the others were singing something with a little bit more syncopation and rhythmic variation to it. I was like, well, it's not necessarily a canon then. We have like a call and response. They're happening simultaneously, though. That's a little different. Kind of like a canon. Actually, I should define this too. Counterpoint, like I mentioned, is when two melodies exist simultaneously. A canon is when one melody starts and another instrument plays that same melody, but delayed, usually by half of a bar or maybe a full bar. And they're going to play the exact same thing, just a second behind the other one. And that's what I thought we were setting up here. That's what it seemed to be with the first two vocals, and the third comes in, and it kind of seems like it's doing it too, and then it doesn't. It creates more of a foundational melody, something that a cello would do in a string trio or quartet, laying down the bass line while still being melodious. Primarily being a foundational element, laying into harmonic devices, but not necessarily contributing to moving melodies like maybe the violas or violins would. And that's actually how I came to understand this one moment, these 13 beats, was a string trio done by vocalists. I don't get this track. It does so many cool things, so many odd things, so many interesting things, and never sticks with any of them, consistently finding something else to do. As soon as this boat has started to take off from the dock, the inhabitants of the boat have jumped back to the dock, let the boat sail, and went to find a different boat to do the same thing with. We don't ever get to go on the journey, we just get to start a lot of them by leaving the shore and then rushing back to it. And I ended up getting quite frustrated by this song, because not only was I expecting any of these ideas to lead us somewhere, but I also wanted some sort of connectivity between them all, and it never really gave me that either. There was one moment, though, I don't even remember what it was, where it was. There was a guitar solo, there was a chord progression change, which happened pretty much every single one of these. I believe there was a piano and some vocal harmonies, and immediately, for whatever reason, 2 beats into this, and I was like, Genesis. This reminds me of some classic progressive rock, some of the English progressive rock stuff. And I began to interpret this less as a connected story of musical ideas, and hopefully about a bunch of musical ideas that support a lyrical journey. Still, not something I think I really enjoy, but at least I'm finding some sort of appreciation for it. I'm really intrigued about the lyrics, though, hoping that it can give me some sort of connection between these ideas, these themes, these concepts that the music chose to omit. But then we have Greener. Very straightforward track here, very pop emo. As I mentioned at the end of the reaction, I think I brought up Red Jumpsuit Apparatus. Something about the chorus stands out to me for them. But as I said, 10, 15 minutes ago, something like that, Hawthorne Heights, I could have seen them release this track, minus the Queen-inspired moments, but the pop emo stuff that makes up a majority of this track, yeah, it feels very much of its time, and I could definitely see a very emotional moments of some young adults drama series, particularly probably on MTV, where the emotions are at such a peak that people are separated, they're not talking to each other anymore, and this song is playing in the background while we get these vignettes of everybody moping or walking between, places, going back to their house, and, knees curled up to the chest while they're in bed, arms wrapped around the knees. Just, I can see something like this in a show like that. It's what we had at the time. And so much of it feels informed by its environment. And this is what I'm talking about, because Good Day seems to speak with something a bit more fringe. It is this geekier side of fun rock stuff that doesn't take itself too seriously, but there's a lot of chops on display. While also, at many times, bringing up Genesis, bringing up Queen. It's a look towards the past while also looking towards musical theater as well. It also engages with the present topic of samples and electronic devices, bringing all this into play too. It is this wide swath of influence. And then track two's Greener feels like it's in conversation only with the mid 2000s. It's very strange to have them back to back, but also to have them smoothly move into each other. I'm curious if Good Day was channel surfing. Is this not one of the channels then? Will each of these tracks seem to pull from a specific influence and hyper-focus on it in a way that Good Day didn't, giving us just blips and blurps and glimpses into specific ideas? I don't know. I guess we'll figure that out as we continue on, but this was a highlight for me. It feels incredibly comfortable. This was the kind of stuff I was listening to at the time. And there's a huge nostalgia factor for me anyways. Is this a good song? It's iterative and in 2026, incredibly dated. It's very telling on itself that it was created within this microcosm of the 2000s. But I enjoyed it. I really did. The melodies in here are great. The harmonies coming into the chorus is fantastic. The mood of this, which is kind of light and fun, but a little dramatic. Just a tinge, even the tension that we get at the end of the chorus, those two chords of tension into the release at the end of every chorus, the tension is so light compared to more dissonant or aggressive styles of music that for some of y'all, maybe more metal listeners, might not have even registered much of the tension there at all. It's very much a tension felt in comparison to the general lightness, the almost not necessarily apathetic, but naive, maybe jovial element to this track. But then there's also the contrast to this, which is the piano ballad moments. They are short-lived and take up such a small part of the track, but we did engage with it twice. It's kind of odd not to bring it up. I don't know what to make of this. It feels more of a strange shift, swinging to a completely different idea that Good Day focused on. Maybe this is that same type of storytelling, though, where maybe the verses and choruses all lock into this pop emo atmosphere, but for stuff that's a little more melancholic, something a bit more dramatic, we need to have just this piano ballad line. And so the music is chosen by the lyrics. Maybe that's the direction to go on it. Otherwise, I see very little connectivity between the verses and choruses and these ballad moments. Very interesting start to an album. I'm interested. You got the hook in me. I got to see where this ride takes us. Let me hit some lyrics on these two and then we'll push forth. Okay. Good Day actually states its case and lines up with how I interpreted it. My first interpretation, and it's just kind of random, like shifting through a TV. The outro of the song and the choruses are simply "let us sing," said over and over and over. Multiple verses in here say that there is no reason for any of this. In fact, verse 3 says, "But we know that this song is not about a no or yes or why. What's really truly what I say is that it's about a little sigh." Very Dr. Seussian in that it kind of doesn't make any sense, and it does describe the song in ways songs are usually not described, but it does say that they're not really focusing on any particular reason for anything that's going on in here. Nothing concrete like no's or yeses, but something that's kind of difficult to track. What does a song sound like if the song is a sigh? Personally, I think of doom metal, but I suppose a sigh is going to mean something different to everyone, given that it's not a traditional way to describe sonic art. Not in this more traditional way, anyways. If you're making something very avant-garde, yeah, I could see people describing that kind of music as a sigh if it fits that bill. We also have the second verse, which says, its name I like to call. It likes to say it's nothing. It lives and breathes, and it insists that it is something. It never liked to speak or run or walk or sleep, and it even thought that everyone tried to thought to take its seat. Again, very Seussian. A lot of it in there just to kind of fill space, to keep the flow going, to engage with the rhyme scheme. What the it is, I can only assume is the song. And what is the song? I don't know. This explains it as if it's some sort of person or maybe an animal. It says it never liked to run or walk or sleep or eat. Maybe it just is. None of this is supposed to be taken seriously. And I think that's what this song is about. It just says, let us sing, let us have fun, let's do stuff. Let's make some music, let's have a good time with it. Does it need to have a deeper meaning? And I think the musical ideas bouncing all over the place matches that very well. It doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about it, but if you're there for the ride, you're gonna have a blast. Now, I assumed Good Day would be a thesis statement for the album, but Greener suggests it's not. Greener is hyper-focused, and not only just that, but also serious. Well, musically, I don't know if they were unironically engaging with the pop emo sound of the time. Lyrically, they're certainly not playing around with anything that isn't straightforward and serious. It is about a falling out between two people. We have our narrator who is still here, wherever here is. This other person used to be here too, but now they're gone. Maybe literally moved away. Maybe it's just an emotional distance. He says that seconds tick like boulders whenever you don't call. And does it seem like that where you are? Wherever it is you are, does it seem like that where you are? Implying that he doesn't even know where this other person is, or maybe that where they are doesn't matter. The distance between them is felt, at least to our narrator. He says, time together, and depending on the weather, we'll either argue in your house or outside. And how different I felt before I got this notch on my belt, because in my plans you were all for me, but now it seems that you'd rather just leave. This is interesting because we never really get a reason for why the other person left, but I wonder if it has something to do with this person's ego. He says that he got a notch in his belt, and things felt different after that. He's had some sort of achievement, some sort of ego boost, something to, say that he's doing better in life through. Why bring that up? Especially here, where he says things felt different and then everything fell apart, if it wasn't for that. The chorus kicks in and says, wherever you go is breaking me slowly. You sound so much further on the phone, and yet you fit right next to me, but there's always a reason why it can't be. Verse 3 leans into this idea of distance and telephones. It says that telephones make you seem miles away, but all alone I get a little meaner, and I leave a message at your tone and miles away from home, but you get a little cleaner of me, and I find a little greener shade of envy. I really like that. something that I skipped at the beginning. The very first line says, "Here's that part again, where everything is more than it should be, and greener seems to fall beneath your feet." And I didn't quite understand this. I assumed greener would be grass, particularly as it is beneath the feet. And I kind of assumed that the grass is always greener on the other side, or maybe you're not ever paying attention to what you have and you always want something more. And so when you lose what you have, you realize what you had. But I do like how this idea of at least alluding to green grass at the start turns into green envy at the end. That regardless of where this person's at in the relationship, they're still surrounded by green. I don't think it means much past that, but it is a neat little bit of wordplay there. This song is just that. About being a little envious, of having a plan of what the future looked like, having this person in it, and for whatever reason, they're no longer here, and not just not with you, but there's an incredible distance, maybe physically, maybe emotionally, between the two of them. And feeling sad, lonely, jealous about it. Having his plans crumbled in his hands. Now musically, this is a very fun track, but it is also pop emo. Breakup songs, loss of love, these are incredibly common for the genre. Despite the popular music that gets paired with it, it still is usually about heartbreak, and that's what we have here. And so you understand how this is very different from Good Day, both musically and lyrically. It has me wondering what the rest of the album's going to be like. The next track is called Welcome to Tally Hall, and maybe this is going to give us a better introduction than Good Day did. Let's dive in, see where Tally Hall takes us now that we're going to Tally Hall.
Welcome to Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum, known from coast to coast like butter and toast. From headlines to bedlines, from schoolroom to pool room. No other place in the contiguous United States or other environs of the world. Welcome.
Some random chip tune. You know another geeky rock band? Devo. How did I forget them?
Can I get a T? And if you hit me with the ALLY, then you'd see why the hall is here for y'all. Well, the mini mall is calling us all in. So kids, pack up your mom's car, back up the Windstar, kick it and drive, and arrive at the Mega Mart. Slide the side hatch with pride, cause your ties match on booty duty like your name was Eddie Thatch. WWTHD, we like to kick it at the university, but all work and no play makes us crazy. So we jump in the bumpin' SUV. Hit the street, get the sweet tunes on one. Do a donut on your mama's fun love bun. And sooner than you ever from the rock and roll show at the Tizzy Hizzy, we'll be gone.
We're in the mini mall, working the carnival. We like to play it all. Welcome to Tally Hall.
To blame.
The automated players I proclaim. Yellow Tide, the swap fellow, writes heterophonic tunes of how love bites. Rat the proud loud guy we adore.
Is my amp too high?
No, turn it up more. So great in the back, sipping yak in here. He's knocking down the shots like good lamb beer. Send home the locksmith, Green's got keys to
I don't know if I can take much more of this.
Please now open the case, give Lou the bass and jiggle your badoo all over the place.
We're in the mini mall, working the carnival. We like to play it all. Welcome to Tally Hall. We're in the mini mall, working the carnival. We like to play it all. Welcome to Tally Hall.
Can I get a click? Flick off the switch and we'll ignite the night in pitch.
Sing songs you like to hear, and the world will disappear. Then we'll be glowing in the dark, lighting up the park.
Revealing that the hall is the place that aims to please
rarities. The collectible, so delectable. The unreliable styles undetectable. Like I might rap like an English chap. Take it by the nickels and I'll bomb your strap. You didn't think we had the goal? Well, bloody welcome to Tally Hall! We're stereosonic, we're animatronic, we're rocking with the global electronic abundance. A quick distraction, a mechanic attraction, got a penny in your pocket for the slot. Hey ho, don't you know, it's a good old-fashioned puppet show. That's right, quite the set, we're the marionette quintet. We think we're playing in a band. We love to give you all a hand.
Oh, cardiacs also. There's so much cardiacs in this on Good Day.
We're in the mini mall, working the carnival. We like to play it all. Welcome to Tally.
What is this? This is moving into the next track, yeah. All right. This missed the boat for YouTube by just a little bit. YouTube came out, I think, the same year as this. But of course, the idea of using YouTube to put out fun music, I don't think was quite a thing yet. It was sort of this novel place where anyone could just upload videos, and the idea of using it as a, an internet stage for performers hadn't quite hit that stride yet. It would be a couple of years off before we started to see some of the more popular early skit creators and music creators on YouTube. This is the kind of song, though, that reminds me of early YouTube. The fun, kind of cringy in some ways, but there's just no care. It is fun. They did this because they wanted to do this. There really is no rhyme or reason to half of what goes on in here. And that's exactly what I miss about early YouTube before it was so corporate and predictable and algorithm fed and directed. When just kind of anything went, and you could find some really bizarre, off-the-wall, niche comedic things, even in the musical sphere. I know Tally Hall isn't a small group, but I wonder how much larger they would have been if they had a large YouTube presence during this time. And, well, I guess there's also the possibility some of their later albums, they could really take off with more of that YouTube ability to spread the video to a new audience. So maybe in the end, YouTube did help them. They seem like that kind of group. But this track right here, dude, I feel like this is more directed than Good Day as well. Good Day, of course, has the umbrella concept of just presenting a show where don't take it too serious, because we don't take it too serious. But this has, once again, a very visual flair. We have a ringmaster at the beginning saying, "Hey, welcome to Tally Hall. You're going to see this and that. Be prepared at the marvelous machine," or whatever this thing is. I forgot what he said. The Marvelous Mechanical Museum. That's what it was. And then you have your rapper coming out and talking up the audience. And saying about all these cool things that's going to be going on, or who Tally Hall is. I don't know. I didn't pick up on a lot of it. But then by the end, we have like this whole thing where the audience is participating in the song itself as if this were a live event. And everyone's clapping along, and then the song wraps up with this, big number where everyone gets to participate, and then everyone claps because it's over and the band did a good job. And it is just a song, completely pre-composed at the end of the day, but it feels like a live event. It feels like something at the beginning of a large museum, something to entertain the guests as they're coming in and kind of put them in the feel-good, happy, don't take things too serious mood before they actually get into the place and start looking at the mechanical things in the museum, I'm going to assume. It has a very visual, theatric flair to it. It presents a situation through sonic form, yes, and in traditional sonic musical structure, but really focusing on delivering this visual idea. This one also quite a bit expands the sonic palette. We have some 80s and 90s hip-hop inspired samples in here. Of course, the vocalist is doing all sorts of interesting voices that I don't know that I'm well versed enough in the realm of hip-hop in general, much less this era of hip-hop, about the rappers themselves to really know if he's impersonating anyone or using any visual inflections that were popular at the time or that maybe were attributed to specific rappers. But there's a lot of vocal stuff going on in there, lots of pitch jumps moving from lower notes to higher notes to kind of get like a squeakiness for a couple specific emphasized beats. Also kind of pulls it into the back of the throat a couple of times and speaks from back here, just creating a lot of sonic changes where we don't really get too much of a melodic idea anymore, focusing more on texture of the delivery alongside the phonetic expression, the rhyme schemes and stuff like that, and also the rhythmic element, because that's a really big part of rapping. But we also have a lot of electronic influence in here too. We had chiptune right at the beginning. We have a lot of sample work in here, especially field recording kind of stuff to set the scene of people walking or mumbling and talking during this performance, the clapping, all sorts of stuff to set the scene here. But we also have some expanded instrumentation in more traditional realms too. There's some strings on this track towards the end of it. We got some brass in there. I'm pretty sure we had some trumpet and trombone. This is an album 3 tracks in where every single track has had its own sonic identity. Some of this is a little bit on the production side as compression, reverb, clarity to voicings. All of this comes into play in balancing everything and giving each track an identity through that. But I think more importantly, it is the instrumentation. Each of these tracks has had a very unique set of sounds associated with them. I don't know if they can keep this up for 12 more tracks. They're going to run out of instruments eventually and have to start repeating some stuff. But I do think it's interesting that they continue to keep this up so far into the album, that they haven't really landed on the Tally Hall sound yet. Harmonically, yes. This one a little not so much, but I'd say that musical theater is the glue that held the first 2 tracks together. It has a little bit of influence in this one, and I'm going to say that more modern classical ideas that define a lot of musical theater are going to show up through a majority of this album and be the glue that holds most of it together. But we are going to get something like this that I'd say veers away from that a little bit, just in order to focus on something a little different. Create a little bit of diversity throughout here. Not that I think this album is going to need any help with diversity in contrast, but certainly to veer away from that more theatrical side for parts of it. I think that's about all I have to say on this one. It is wild, though, come to think of it, how it starts off very 90s hip hop. And by the end of it, we almost have like a country hoedown, everybody vibing together with some guitars, with this very catchy sort of southern melody line to it. How did we get there? I don't remember a point in the track where it was very clearly shifting between the two styles, and yet the very clear difference between the opening of this track and the finale. Let me hit some lyrics on this one. Welcome to Tally Hall is exactly what it says on the tin. They're introducing you to the band. It says, welcome to Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum, setting up this idea that we have people entering into this place. It kicks up and says that these people are fun, they're chill, they're relaxed, they don't care about anything. They're just here to have fun. It says we like to kick it at universities, all work and no play makes us crazy, so we jump in the bumpin' SUV, hit the street, get the sweet tunes, do some donuts. Now you found the rock and roll show. It says we're out here to have fun. The chorus says we're in a mini mall, work in the carnival. We like to play it all, welcome to Tally Hall. Again, keeping it light, keeping it chill. Verse 2 introduces the characters of Tally Hall, not with names, but with tie colors. The yellow tie is the suave fellow who writes heterophonic tunes of how love bites. Red, the proud, loud guy we adore. Is my amp too high? No, turn it up more. Gray's in the back, sipping Nat, can you hear? He's knocking down the shots like Bill Lambier. Send home the locksmith, Green's got keys to unlock the rock in the act, if you please, and open the case, give Blue the bass, and jiggle your boondoggle all over the place. Basically says, this is who we are. Sort of like a good K-pop group, or back in the day, a good boy band. Everyone has their personality, their shtick, who they are within the group. We have that here too. Verse 3 tells you what you're going to hear here, about how unpredictable they are, that their collectibles are so delectable, the collectibles of sounds, I suppose they say, that their unreliable styles are undetectable, and at any time they may rap like an English chap and take you by the knickers. This is a wild group. Very fun, very lighthearted. And then says that they're stereosonic and animatronic, rapping with the robo-electronics. It's a quick distraction, a mechanic attraction, got a penny in your pocket for the slot. As if to say that you put the money in the little change slot and then they perform, as animatronics do, playing their music. And then when when the show is done, they power down until someone else puts money in. They are part of this mechanical museum. Nothing more, nothing less. And this is reinforced by the final chorus. We think we're playing in a band, but we'd love to give you all a hand. It leans into the idea that this is all just performance, but it is all for fun. And that is the bottom line to everything. I'm curious about Greener then. Good day and welcome to Tally Hall. Both say turn your brains off and enjoy the ride. Greener gets a little more serious. Where is that going to take us forward? So far the album doesn't know if it wants to be more serious or if it just wants to be playful. We've kind of gone back and forth on this, though the next track is called Taken for a Ride, which I could see being a playful track, but can also see it being a bit more serious too. Someone who thought they were getting one thing but ended up getting something else. So let's dive into that. See what's going on with track 4. Also, we do have a few seconds left in this one.
Marvin walked into a helpless land and wondered lately, am I happy?
We saw this at the beginning of Good Day as well. The Vocaloid stuff, vocoder, probably more like it.
Took a step into the elevator, who said, guess I'll see you later.
Fun syncopation. Interesting dissonance there, though.
15 flights that lasted nights and days and spent without a cent for creatures with their features. Listening to painted whispered light on top forgotten hill. Next the stranded senate of the white brick house.
Okay, just gotta go with it.
Questions for their story. All feeling now, he took his bow and left the stage of time with no answers to no questions. Lonely paperbacks that wanted just a taste of feeling to implode them before living.
It's interesting how this is fun in these moments and then ominous
This is lovely.
in others.
Listening to painted whispered light on top forgotten hill. One secondary smile to go that extra mile to make me feel today, to make it go away. The chemistry is gone. Take it for a ride, far away from you, no longer left inside. Actor with his world renown was thinking about his last real day of silence.
These songs are incredibly
Was it
dense
over?
with lyrics.
Or is it just we all think that our answer isn't real? It's just a picture of a letter. What you seem to found it's useless. Just a worry. Something normal happened, something horrible laying around, so please stop thinking. This is happy.
The bells are a nice touch, well, and the chimes too.
One secondary smile to go that extra mile to make me feel today, to make it go.
Going for the big rock ending.
The chemistry is gone.
Well, they have a lot of time left too.
Far away from you, no longer left inside. One secondary smile
The chord change or key change.
to make me feel today, to make it go away. The chemistry is gone. Take it for a ride, far away from you, no longer left inside. There are no secrets in the door, just a moment doing chores. And there's something, and there's something, and there's something, and there's something next to nothing, and there's something, and there's something, but you're gone.
Very interesting collection of ideas here. A majority of this bounces back and forth between a very upbeat, bouncy, syncopated bum 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 ba-dum bum ga bum ga dum ba da da ga ga, very syncopated, very fun, very light. And then we get the piano parts and we slow the energy down. We go for this, big like rock opera thing going on there. And I think this is beginning to solidify my ideas. Yes, I do think that this album is in conversation with bands like Devo, and they might be giants. But honestly, I think really when it comes down to it, this is Cardiacs meets Queen. This is what I feel through a majority of this. Welcome to Tally Hall deviates from that a little bit, and I think is more in conversation with the other bands I brought up. But seeing this idea of fun, eclectic, nonsensical, and I use that loosely. Most of these songs do make sense, even through the lens of music theory, but nonsensical, joyful tracks paired with larger than life, theatric rock moments is kind of the thing on here. These are the two main sounds we've come back to. Everything else is ephemeral, something to do for a wacky moment and then toss into the junk heap of stuff we've tried or stuff we've introduced, whereas these two sounds are the mainstays, are the ones that continue to show up through these tracks. And this song basically puts that on full blast. Something fun and bouncy and something dramatic and theatric. Something focusing more on light, bright sounds, and something on warmer sounds. This one focusing on layers that create density of sounds, where there's just a lot of different rhythmic devices going on. And when we come over to the more theatric side, the layers are all cooperating to create atmosphere. We have a density of emotion versus a density of sounds. This is what this album is to me so far. I mean, we're only 15 minutes into this, so about a quarter of the way through, I suppose. There's a lot of time for them to deviate from this, but it is what I'm getting throughout this opening quarter of this album. Through that lens, I should be taking it as they tell me, right? This is just for fun. Don't think about it too hard. That's not what I do here, though. I could absolutely just turn my brain off, listen to a track, and say, dude, that was fun. I liked the trumpet part. And then move on to the next track and just take it very casually. But that's not why y'all show up to the channel. And personally, I like to understand a little bit more of what they're doing, some of the technicalities of it. But unfortunately, I'm not too sure that this album works for that. Not so far, anyways. Why do we have this giant swing from this bright, bouncy, poppy to dramatic and theatric? Maybe the lyrics do support that. But we've listened to a lot of songs where the lyrics might move between those extents and musically they find a way to mash that together. In fact, post-rock does this very well, starting with lighter ideas and building into more dramatic, heavy outros. Maybe not quite in this realm of poppy, bouncy ideas, but still you can create light, fun concepts that build or transition into emotionally heavy or dense moments in a way that feels connected, and Tally Hall isn't interested in that. So I'm not sure what I can bring to the table 4 tracks in as far as analytical discussion, especially when so much of this is densely layered, but also fairly simple too. While there is innovation in a sense of pairing all of these ideas together when I look at individual concepts. When I listen to the bouncy piano and guitar parts that dominate the main verse, when I listen to how the vocal melody is built on top of that, when I listen to the drum parts there, that's something that's been done before. When I listen to the dramatic over-the-top section with the belted vocals and the slowed tempo and the piano-led very dramatic chord progression, running this up before landing on the key chords, it's going to kick this section off, eventually bringing in trumpets to make this feel a bit, larger in scope. I've heard that before too, not even just in my entire life, but even looking at this time frame, 2005 and before. This is a sound that has been done. In fact, this is incredibly common in musical theater. But we had also seen art rock and rock opera stuff having done this at this point as well, decades earlier. I mean, as I mentioned, I still call this the Queen section because they've done it on 3 different tracks now, and every single time it feels like they're just playing a different variation or a different interpretation of what they've heard Queen do, particularly during Bohemian Rhapsody, or even the slower part of We Are the Champions. Everything in here in isolation is iteration, heavily wearing their influences on their sleeves, not doing anything new within the genres themselves. I will say that Welcome to Tally Hall is probably the most inventive track on here, with Good Day kind of doing that too, but Good Day I think focused more on musical concepts, where Tally Hall ended up looking at more samples and electronic ideas, which, yes, maybe that's also iterative too. Electronic, especially early electronic music, is quite a blind spot for me. But at least in my experience, Welcome to Tally Hall feels a bit more unique. Good Day goes in that direction too, but again, I hear a lot of the different ideas, and in conglomeration, yeah, it's very wild for all these ideas to be put together. It's very experimental in that realm. But the ideas themselves are very representative of the genres and sounds that they're influenced by. And since a lot of this, especially Taken for a Ride, is influenced by popular sounds, they tend to be less dynamic, less layered, less complex than less palatable or less popular genres. For instance, Taken for a Ride, right at the beginning, the piano, the guitar, the vocals, the bass, the drums, they're all kind of on that one dancey rhythm. Lots of syncopation within it, but they're all within that same realm. We don't have rhythmic layering going on there. The melody line, pretty straightforward too, kind of bouncing around 3 or 4 different notes. Not a lot of jumping to that either. You got a home note, you kind of hover around it. The drumming is very straightforward there too. Even when we get into the Queen section, it's a straightforward chord progression. We do have a key change in it where we take all of the ideas or all of the notes and rise them up. I'd say about a third, I think, is what I heard in there. Key changes at the end of songs to emphasize a rising of intensity is something music is done forever. And as I mentioned, a lot of this is just chordal work, chordal layering. We eventually get some brass in there, but it's a very straightforward embellishing line. There isn't really a lot to talk about here, except for the fact that we're clashing these things together. This isn't the first time we've run into this problem. I can't think of another album off the top of my head that was like this, but where the innovation is about the genre bending, not necessarily the composition itself. I do wonder how much more I'm actually going to be able to say about this album, but they have sort of surprised me so far with what they have presented. So I'm interested to see where they take us from here, especially on their shorter tracks, which I see we have most of them towards the end of. This is very front heavy. 3, 4, and 5 minute songs up until track 12. And then 145, 13, 152. I mean, the end of this album is a lot of short stuff. So it's actually not really 15 tracks, probably more about 11, which is average, I'd say, for a 50-minute album. Anyways, let me read some lyrics to this and we'll head into track 5. I have no idea what's going on in this track. I'm just going to read the first verse because I can't even describe what's odd about it. It says, Marvin walked into a helpless land and wondered lightly, am I happy? Following the footsteps left by man, he stepped to reprimand the mystic who sadistic took a step into the elevator who said, guess I'll see you later. Don't you worry. 15 flights that lasted nights and days that spent without a cent for creatures with their beat shirts. Part of this feels very gong-like. Much like some of the other tracks, I've talked about the Seussian style of lyrical writing and rhyming where not everything necessarily needs to make sense, but at least in the previous 3 tracks there has been a level of sense to it. Even if individual lines are done more for the sound of the words than the meaning, overall there is still a message to be told, and I don't feel like that's so true here, or if it is, the message is less clear, more vague than the others, and has become ephemeral in that process. I cannot grasp what this track is trying to tell me. And I don't think that it helps either that I'm fairly sure the 3 verses are all disconnected, a series of vignettes rather than portions of a tale. The chorus, I was hoping might connect some of this, and it doesn't. Other than the fact that it brings about a loss of joy. And I suppose that is something that comes up in all of these. The word happy shows up in, I believe, all 3 verses. The chorus mentions one secondary smile to go that extra mile, to make me feel today, to make it go away. The chemistry is gone, taken for a ride, far away from you, no longer left inside. This idea of losing the magic of the world. And I really tried to place that against each of the verses. I can see it in the first one. It's very clear. We have Marvin, who might be the Marvin who owns the Marvelous Mechanical Museum, but also might not. There's nothing in here that indicates that. He asks if he's happy. Very clear notion right there. He says all he does is follow the footsteps left by man. But then he stepped to reprimand, keeping the man side in here as we begin to introduce the new rhyme, the mystic who's sadistic. I don't understand this. Then he steps into an elevator and he says, guess I'll see you later, which just seems like a way to rhyme and keep things going. And he's in the elevator for forever. I don't know. The second verse talks about being in front of a stranded Senate, and having questions, but not getting answers to none of the questions, which, did he have questions or did he get no answers to things he didn't ask? And I don't know, it talks about lonely paperbacks that wanted just a taste of feeling to implode them before living, tiptoed to the wooden sign that said, now take your place in line for happy, this is lovely. This is very Cardiacs-esque. It feels like it's supposed to be talking about a general discontent for several people in this narrative here, and playing it all together under the guise that life could be better, but it just isn't now. And it has that dreariness that I think the Cardiacs likes to lean into, and dryness of themes while playing around with words themselves more loosely, where you're supposed to get the gist of the words, not so much look at them specifically, but something about Cardiac's tends to hit a little stronger. I can feel them better. That's not to say that I think they do this type of lyric writing better, but simply that I'm on the same wavelength of what Cardiac's does and not necessarily of what's happening right here on this track. And again, we've had previous Tally Hall tracks where the lyrics I have been on the same page with, even if they've been a bit ridiculous in their lyrics. So it really is just this track that stands out to me as something that, at least for me, kind of misses the mark. I can see where it's leaning to, where it's kind of gesturing towards, but it never quite directly states it in a way that makes any sense to me. Instead, I have this vague idea of discontent told through vignettes, and I guess that's interesting. It's just kind of lacking the general storytelling they've had on previous songs. Next up, we're going to check out The Bidding. This song is only 2.5 minutes long. I may end up running it into Be Born. Let's dive in, see where we go. I mean, if there's something Tally Hall does well, it is harmonies.
I've been sleeping in a cardboard box, spending every dollar at the liquor shop.
This is also a sound of the time.
I'll try to give you love until the day you drop.
A sort of poppy take on reggae. There's another artist who really dwelled in that style around the time, and I can't think of who it was.
All you gotta do is activate my bill, and I'll fetch you anything you like. Going once, going twice, every man here has a price. Over where, over there, sold to not a single lady in here.
I've been in like 1,000 times, dated every woman in the atmosphere. I've been to every continent, broken all the hearts in every hemisphere. And if I'm not the type of guy you like to circumvent, just remember not to love me when I disappear. I graduated at the top, I like to take advantage of the bourgeoisie. So if you have a fantasy of being a queen, maybe you should blow a couple bucks on me.
Yeah. He talks about something about the queen, and that's when the very regal brass come in. That's how a lot of the instrumental decisions seem to be.
Shop around, don't shop around. And I'll give you all you ever need, ever need. Don't worry, I will never let you down, let you down. Don't worry, I will never let you down. So many ladies are wanting romance.
What is all of this?
But the dates never break over here, over there, over where, anywhere. They're too busy with dating, the meaning to care, and he's sold.
Yeah, I'm gonna let it keep rolling. I don't have much to add to that track in particular, but I am brewing some ideas to talk about in general.
I suppose you're quite content in your swimming pool. All you pink-skinned babes are the same, and you can't stay forever young. So get out here and see the sun. You're only 6 inches away from becoming one. I was in your shoes before, or lack thereof, and things worked out for me. There's a dozen people here, and they're waiting for you. It's your party, you can cry if you want to. What if I told you I could show you something? What if I told you I could make you live? Follow my instruction, swim in the direction of my voice.
I does this also sound like a child's television show melody?
Hear my voice. You think that you've seen it all in your little ball, but man, you're wrong. And she's been waiting, longing hard to kiss your head and hold your hands and hold you while you fall asleep.
Those steel brushes on this.
I told
Yeah, I think they are on the drum
I could
kit.
show you something. What if I told
Oh, and
I
a
could
washboard.
make you live, follow my instruction, swim in the direction of my voice. Hear my
Good old fiddle on the
voice
side.
of my voice. Hear my voice. Ba, ba, da, ba. Ba, ba, da, ba, ba, ya. Ba, ba, da, ba. Ba, ba, da, ba, ba, ya. What if I told you I could show you something? What if I told you I could make you live? Follow my instruction, swim in the direction of my voice. Hear my voice, of my voice. Hear my voice.
All right. Something interesting about that track. I don't have anything to add on the bidding. We had two ideas in there, and once again, a little bit of contrast as we swing between the two of them. Not a usual combination, but it ended up working, and the track ended up in pop rock realm, which was somehow they keep doing that. I'm going to touch on that in a moment, though. But this one, once again, is in conversation with what's popular at the time. This reminds me of groups like Mumford & Sons, which mixed a bit of a country-esque, bluegrass, Americana, folk kind of thing with popular ideas, strong elements of production, catchy hooks, and kind of bringing it to a mainstream ear. So once again, another track that I don't think there's much innovation on, although even with this one, we didn't have swinging between ideas. This is just a very straightforward copy of a Mumford & Sons style track, complete with all the harmonies on it as well, which I did enjoy the harmonies on the bidding. The the acapella humming parts were a delight. I don't see how that matches anything in the music, but it was a delight. I'll give them that. But I came to a very wild conclusion here too. Almost all these tracks have been unique. Unique in ways that are popular-ish. They bring palatability to pretty much everything here. There's palatable rock, there's palatable theater, there's palatable country. It's bringing everything within a pop lens. And also I'd say something around a pop rock lens to almost everything in here is focused around drums, vocals, and guitars. Occasionally pianos, which are popular within the rock genre too. And everything else is supporting. Sometimes we'll have brass, sometimes we'll have synthesizer, sometimes we'll have samples and electronic drum kits. But for the most part, the rock kit is in the middle of this song, middle of the album. And there's another band who made incredibly catchy, infectiously popular, I think I had those backwards, incredibly popular, infectiously catchy music across a wide spectrum of genres, and like to use harmonies within that. I'm either going to be called a genius right now or adult, and we're going to find out who thinks what of me as I say this. Tally Hall is doing a Beatles. an album full of a bunch of disparate musical ideas, but that come together under a larger thematic umbrella through the lens of what they're singing about. All of it done in something that is incredibly palatable, maybe not necessarily in the intention of we want to make palatable music, but simply that the music they want to make is something that is more acceptable within the mainstream lens. The big difference I can see, though, is that the Beatles were carving new ground with most of what they were doing, inventing genres as they were going, where Tally Hall is more iterative. Part of this is probably because Beatles were at the forefront of the modern rock sound, and they had a unique position to do that, whereas Tally Hall is more informed by rock's history. I don't think one is any better than the other. I do think that it is interesting how atmospheres, environments, and cultures will inform how artists create art. There absolutely could be another Beatles style band out there who creates a brand new sound from every angle, constantly reinventing what the base concepts of maybe rock or pop or electronic or hip hop could be, and having every song being a wild exploration of sound in general. But I also think it's something that is going to be a bit rarer, as we have had an explosion of what is possible in so many artists in this realm ever since music production has become a bit more democratized. I think it's democratized. And you know, we have software and keyboards and music production tools, hardware and software, that is becoming more and more affordable. It is easier for people to make music. It no longer requires too much of a financial hurdle anymore of having to buy instruments, all the instruments that you want to use, and then buy studio time, and have to work with tapes and have to get everything done in one shot and all of this stuff. It is easier than ever to make music, and because of that, we have a lot of eclectic stuff out there now. That's not to say, again, that I don't think we could have another Beatles-style explosion of a single artist just making genres left and right. The landscape has changed quite a bit, and I'd be surprised to see something like that. Anyways, back to Tally Hall. That's what I'm getting so far. This reminds me of a Beatles album, for better or worse. As I've mentioned in the past, I tend to listen to albums. I'm not a playlist kind of person. And I listen to albums because I'm in a specific mood. If I want something heavy, if I want something dark and weighty, if I want something bright and poppy, if I want something dancey, if I want something jazzy, if I want something more intelligent, I have a specific sound I have in mind. Sort of like movie genres. If I'm in the mood to see some sick action scenes, putting on a rom-com isn't going to work in that moment, but that doesn't mean that I dislike rom-coms. And the same thing is true with music. And so when I get something like this, I don't know when I would ever be in the mood for this, because every 5 minutes it's doing something completely different. I would have to be in the mood for a jack of all trades kind of style of music. And that feels a lot like a playlist where you get a bunch of different artists at different times in their life, and a bunch of different types of music all played in a row. Not typically how I personally listen to music. And I am finding my experience with this to be, well, a little diminished. I think individually everything that I've heard so far is well done. The production is solid. And it sounds great. I haven't really had any issues with the music. But at the same time, I think a lot of this would work really well in isolation. Would I like Be Born? Yeah, dude, I thought this was a cool little, poppy bluegrass track. 100%. I'd enjoy to listen to this. Do I want to listen to this after the vocal harmonies and pop rock sound of The Bidding? Probably not in the same sitting. I don't know when I would be down for that. And so if you do enjoy albums that constantly move all over the place, this is for you. This is like the opposite of that Meshuggah album that we listened to earlier this week, where it was almost like total monotony. it had variation in it, but every track was kind of the same thing. If you wanted to break it down and find the nuance, yes, there is changing elements between, parts of that album. But on the whole, it kind of does its one thing very well, but it's just that one thing. I prefer somewhere in the middle. As usual, I'm a middle of the road guy. That's too singular a vision for me. This is too wide of a vision for me. And yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. That's what this album is, though. It reminds me of the Beatles, and it is the polar opposite of Meshuggah. Oh man, this brain, man, sometimes it comes up with the weirdest stuff, and I just gotta say it because I can't keep that kind of comparison to myself. This is the anti-Meshuggah. That's what Tally Hall is. Okay, focusing back up. One thing I really love about this, and comically, Be Born didn't really have this, so it's going to be more about some of the other stuff on this album, is this, I wrote Amorphous Evolution. I find it really wild when I think about these tracks and how a lot of them are wildly swinging between different ideas. I mean, even looking at the bidding, the humming into the rockier stuff, into that very poppy sound at the end of the track, it all kind of flowed. Like, if you look at the atmospheres of them, wildly different. The kind of energy, the rhythmic devices, the atmosphere and emotion, the harmonic palette, different. From moment to moment, these are wildly different ideas. But there is an evolution. There is transition between ideas. Getting to that poppier element at the end required a harmonic shift and a small palette change, and yet it worked. It's almost invisible. That's actually true on most of this, aside from the channel surfing stuff like Good Day, which I think is a little tougher to create this feeling of smooth movement when the ideas themselves are as jarring as they are. But they still find a way to make it smoother than it, a lot of this album could be entirely worse as far as jagged transitions. It does surprise me and continue to impress me how good of musical storytellers they are. Of being able to take all these disparate ideas and find a way to weave between all of them in ways that at least make some sense. We have definitely listened to albums and tracks that have no care in the world for transitions, and it is just whiplash. And I really haven't had too much whiplash on this album. Again, the first track, but I think that was the purpose of it. But everything else, there has been an attempt to smooth things over. Even if it's only like a 20% smoothing, it still is something. I can feel that there is an attention to that detail. And some of these genres and atmospheric switches should not be able to be swiftly moved between, and yet they still kind of pave out a smoother road for us to walk through as we're going from one idea to the next. May not be the smoothest road, but it is, it's better than lumpy hills and stuff. That there is a path here to walk on, and I do find that rather impressive. And there is the other thing that ties into that too, and it really stood out to me on Be Born here. There is a lot of cross-discipline musicianship going on here. I have to assume that the 5 people in the band are playing most of the instruments, but even if we just look at something like the drum work, it has been rather diverse across this album. In fact, on this one, we have a bit more of a laid-back drum idea focusing on steel brushes. And there's a totally different way of creating rhythmic devices with the steel brushes because they have a different texture and feel. You can play them like you're using drumsticks, but you're really not going to get the most out of them. And so even within that microcosm, we're looking at a drummer who has showcased 4 or 5 different ideas so far, some more energetic, some less, some more spacious, some more ambient, some more driven. But there's also so many instruments on here too. Some of it I'm going to assume is probably synthesized of some sort using a keyboard or a synthesizer to perform them, but there's also some instruments in here that sound pretty close to actually being played, and there are instruments outside of the rock band setup. I mean, even on the last track, the fiddle off on the side or the violin, we have an upright bass, we have the washboard in here, we have a completely different type of acoustic guitar that probably is a special kind of acoustic guitar, but also the way that it's played matches this sort of bluegrass, folky Americana thing more so than acoustic rock music. So there's a really strong sense of musicianship across this entire album, as these 5 people have to play the close to 25 instruments we've heard so far. We're only halfway through the album. I got to give credit where credit's due. Even if the music isn't always hitting me, it is really impressive to hear them pull all of this off. Both the music theory required to understand and write music within all of these genres, but also the ability to play all these instruments in ways that feel natural for these genres and don't feel like you're playing an instrument in the style of a different, or playing an instrument in a different style within this atmosphere or this genre. Very impressive. All right, let's hit some lyrics for these two. I did mention that this album is full of styles and sounds, and it's not really a unified sound as much as a conglomeration of a lot of different ones. But what I had specifically written down in my notes, you're not going to hear me get more southern than that too often. What I had specifically written down was you have to be in the mood for entropy. And I think it really clicked with me when I was reading the lyrics and going over my notes, trying to figure out what I'm getting out of this album, that I realized this is probably an album for people who also enjoy Will Wood. And I would not be surprised if the Venn diagram for Tally Hall and Will Wood is almost just one circle. I could see there being a lot of overlap. I just had to get that out there. Something that's started entering into the back of my mind. This track in particular, though, is an imagining of the dating scene as an auction. The chorus says, going once, going twice, every man here has a price. Over where? Over there? Sold to not a single lady in here. Later on, we'll see going once, going twice. Won't these gentlemen suffice? Any here, any there, any motions anywhere? Going twice, going thrice. Guess this means we'll go 4 times a lady. Trying to sell these men at this auction. Eventually, it says that the prospects are good, but the date's never great. And the women are too busy winning the bidding to care. And now we have one that's sold. In between these choruses, we have the verses where several men talk about their life and why they would be a good partner. The first one says they sleep in a cardboard box. They spend every dollar at the liquor shop, but they don't have a lot. Even though they don't have a lot, they'll love you until the day that you drop. They don't have a lot to give, but they got a lot of love. The second one says they've been training like a Pavlov dog. Let my independence out to take a hike. All you got to do is activate the bell and I'll fetch anything you like. Saying that he's trained to just be completely submissive in a relationship. The third one says that they've dated every woman in the atmosphere and that they've been here almost 1,000 times. Been to every continent and broken hearts in every hemisphere. And if I'm not the type of guy you like to circumvent, just remember not to love me when I disappear. It's very interesting. Basically says he's a lady killer. He has no problem breaking hearts and leaving in the middle of the night. He says some women have just obsessed over me. Just don't be that type of person. And this relationship will be fine. Just expect it to be something short-lived. A little fling. Because that's all he wants out of it. So that's what this is. what I think is really interesting is I'm pretty sure this predates online dating, or at least the current wave of online dating. The Hinge and the Tinder landscape out there, which really is about putting on this presentation of who you are and hoping that a woman will click on your, we'll see that you liked them and will respond back. It really is putting yourself out there and hoping someone will bite, almost as if fishing in this case. Very different from, at least in my experience, in-person dating, but it does kind of tap into exactly what Tinder would become years later. Very interesting. All right, next up we have Be Born. Be Born, much like Welcome to Tally Hall, is exactly what you get on the tin. The title of the song tells you all. It is about a doctor talking to a baby in the womb, waiting for the baby to be pushed out, for the birth to happen. It says, I suppose you're quite content in your swimming pool. You pink-skinned babes are all the same. You can't stay forever young, so get out here and see the sun. It says, I was in your shoes before, or lack thereof, and things worked out for me. There's a dozen people here and they're waiting for you. It's your party. You can cry if you want to. Nice little pop culture reference there. Verse 3 says, you think you've seen it all in your little ball, but man, you're wrong, and she's been waiting long and hard to kiss your head and hold your hands and hold you while you fall asleep. Of course, saying, there's more to life. You just gotta leave where you're comfortable. There's someone out here waiting to hold you, which of course is the child's mom, presumably. The chorus states, what if I told you I could show you something? What if I told you I could make you live? Follow my direction, follow my instructions, swim in the direction of my voice and hear my voice. Yeah, it's a bit of a fantastical read on being a doctor, helping a child be born, speaking to them as if they could understand you at all. It's wild. We go from something like Greener, which is my heart hurts because my girl left me and she's so far away, to the Bidding, which is a bit of a comical take on dating. And then we go to Taken for a Ride, which is, I presume, about unhappiness in some ways, done through a bit of a comical take. And then you hit Be Born, which is a comedy skit. Basically, the punchline is that this is obviously not how the real world operates. But if you could talk to a child before they're born and they could understand you, what would a doctor say? There's some funny lines in here. This album's all over the place in tone, and it is. Nothing else to add to that. Next up, we're going to check out Banana Man. Let's kick it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel P.T. Chester Whitmore is proud to present Bumbo Chungo and his Zimbabwe Softman.
Do you see Banana Man hopping over on the white hot sand? Here he come with some for me, freshly taken from banana tree. Banana Man, me want a done. Give me double and a bonus one. Give me more for all me friends. This banana flow never end. Do you want a banana? Peel it down and go. Do you want a banana? This banana for you.
Tonight we dance around the flame. Then we get to play spirit game. Spirit names we shout out loud. Shake the thunder from the spirit cloud. All the songbirds in the tree chant a tune to let the spirit you're too uptight, you know. You could laugh and kick it back and go, but without a rhythm or a rhyme, you do not banana all the time. Fly away from city on the run, try to make a little fun. Look, you come to the bungalow. After can't you tell me, don't you so? Don't you love the bumping of the drum? Make you shake until the bongo numb. Let the bongo play you till you drop. This banana never stop. Forget all your troubles and go with the flow. Forget about whatever you may never know. Like whether whatever you're doing is whatever you should, and whether anything you do is ever anything good. And then forget about banana when it's stick in your throat, and when they make you wanna bellow, what you stuck in a choke. And then forget about the yellow from the beckoning man who make you take another one and make a mock of your plan.
It's an odd mix between like Afro-Cuban rhythms, African instrumentation, but also this stereotypical tribal stuff that comes up every once in a while. And of course there's the accent that they're putting. I don't... This little smooth jazz bit. I'm trying to figure out what it's trying to say.
Tomorrow morning on the plane, no banana make you go insane. Floating back to busy town, no banana make you want to frown. Do you want a banana? Peel it down and go, Do you want a banana? This banana for you.
I'm so... What? Part of me, there's a part of my mind that says, dude, you know how to enjoy this, man. Just chill out. Strap in and enjoy the ride. I want to listen to that part of my brain. I really do. But then you get something like this. And how do you just enjoy this? That's what I don't get. I think a vast majority of this has generic, like, beach vibes to it. I think part of it is going to be those Afro-Cuban rhythms, the claves that are present in a couple of places here, especially with the wood blocks that we have, doing those rhythmic devices. Those are really nice. We have some finger drums in here too, and those are certainly adding to a specific atmosphere based on, a lot of this is from cultural biases and where these instruments have been used within pop culture, particularly in Western culture, that may not even be entirely representative of the cultures they were taken from, but that's a conversation for an entirely different day. But we also have the guitar chords that pop up at times that kind of have very relaxed beach vibes too. The vocals are chill, very laid back. Part of that I think is going to come from the inflection, which is a bit on the softer side. There's a nice assertiveness to it, but it isn't overpowering. But also a softness of a lot of the consonant sounds as well. For instance, I think it was the last line or second to last line or something. He said like this banana is yours or something like that. But instead of this, it was dis with a D rather than a TH. That softness kind of adds a little bit of relaxation to the vibe. A lot of this feels very chill. And then out of nowhere, we get some smooth jazz, which is also chill, but in a very different suit. No longer something that feels outdoorsy, but now something that feels indoors. Maybe suit and tie, a little classier. Get a little bit of lounge in here too, but also, for lack of better words, a whitening of the voice. And then we go back to the other stuff. And then we finish it up with a little bit of a loungy vocal run into a loungy piano thing, and then back to a very beach style guitar chord to wrap it up. What is this song saying with all of this? There's also the random stereotypical like angry tribal sounds that are in. They showed up twice. It's not a great look, but here's the thing, right? This is all surface level. And I think this is where an important conversation begins to crop up. And the lyrics are going to be very important in this, but is this harmful or not? As far as I can tell, there are some more racist, stereotypical things going on in here, but they could be used for subversive ideas. Now, I don't get any subversion out of the music. And like I mentioned, the outdoorsy sounding instruments and the more folky sounding instruments are ones that are also paired with that. I don't even know what accent it is. Y'all will let me know, though, I'm sure, in the comments. And then when we got to the jazz, the classier side of things, the voice whitened up. We lost the accent, we lost the softening of consonants, and we focused on something a bit more classy, if you will. This feels very purposeful, very intentional, but what is the purpose behind it? And that's kind of where I'm lost on this, and the fact that so much of this is about bananas while having an Afro-Cuban sound in general and sort of African tribal ideas musically in other places, that also isn't really helping seem any less harmful. Is a lot of tropey ideas smashed together in odd ways. This is Tally Hall's MO. This is what most of their music has been. Just, this one doesn't quite click for me. Although, once again, I do want to showcase their transitions in here are solid. Instruments leading into the next idea, harmonic movements to help pull us into where we're going. There's always something to help move into that next idea. A volume rise, something is going on. I do want to applaud them because, honestly, these two types of music, I don't think I would ever in my life have heard within the same track, within conversation with each other. They kind of pulled that off. But there's a lot of questions I have around it. And aside from the transitions, I'm not too sure I enjoyed it. It's fine, maybe? Maybe. I don't know. Let me hit some lyrics on this one. I'll see what's going on there. This song appears to be driving a parallel between the fun times spent with the man who will get you bananas and the boring time when you're not with them. A lot of this track is simply saying, here's a banana, and we're going to have fun. Then there's the bridge, which we'll get to in a second. But the gist of that is basically, are you really doing what you want in life? And then there's the smooth jazz breakdown. And this one says, it's 9 o'clock and getting dark. The sun is falling from the sky. I never left so early, and you may wonder why. Then we go back to getting on a plane to get more bananas. A few people I saw in the Genius annotations have mentioned that the banana may be a stand-in for drugs. I hope not. Positioning a generically Jamaican accent as a drug dealer is not a fantastic look, especially when paired with the music. But the idea of going to someone who says, do you see the banana man? Here he comes with some for me, freshly taken from the banana tree. Banana man, I want a ton. Give me double and a bonus one. Give me more for all my friends. This banana flow will never end. Tonight we dance around the flame, then we get to play the spirit game. Spirit names we shout out loud, shake the thunder of the spirit cloud. The songbirds are in a tree, they chant a tune. And tonight the spirits will be jumping by the firelight. The chorus simply stating, do you want a banana? Peel it down and go, This banana's for you. It's a little bit of letting loose going on here. It's also a lot of allusion towards what looks to be tribal ritual and playing it very loosely here. But I think generally this is the analogy they're making. That when you go back to work, you're there late. It says that, it's 9 o'clock, it's getting dark. I've never left so early. Everything is played straighter here. It's more classy, more professional. But right after that says, tomorrow morning, we're back on the plane. We're going to go get some bananas. I think it could be seen in some sort of light that work life is boring and outside of work life is fun. Whatever the banana ends up being. But what is the banana? And this is where the bridge is interesting. We have, seemingly from the banana man's perspective, he says, look at you, you're uptight. You could laugh and kick it back, but without a rhythm or a rhyme, you can't banana all of the time. So you fly away from the city and try to have a little fun. And don't you love the bumping of the drum that makes you shake your bum until it goes numb? It says here the banana never stops. You can forget your troubles, go with the flow. But it says, forget about whatever you may never know, like whether whatever you're doing is whatever you should, and whether anything you do is ever anything good. You even enjoying your life if you have to go somewhere else to have fun? Are the decisions in your life actually worth being made the way that you're making them? Are you living or are you surviving is what this bridge is stating. But then it says, forget about the banana when it sticks in your throat and when it makes you want to bellow, but you stuck in a choke. And then forget about the yellow from the beckoning man who makes you take another one and makes a mockery of your plan. And it seems to push away from a simple idea of, do you really enjoy your job? Of how much are you letting slide by in your daily life of being taken advantage of by those above you? And that's a curious angle to take. this song does, I think, end up playing around with stereotypes. I think it comes from a good place, even though I don't think the execution is entirely solid. It definitely feels like something of the turn of the 2000s. I don't know if any of y'all remember American comedy, sketch comedy, television, what was going on at MTV at the turn of the 2000s, especially the 90s coming into the 2000s. Media wasn't great at the time, to put it mildly. This was certainly born of that, I believe. But I do think it has its heart in the right place. It's just using the vocabulary of a problematic time. But it does attempt to ask people, are you happy with your life? And especially if you're finding escape from your daily life in whatever the banana would represent for you, are you really living if you're only enjoying the weekends of your life? And I think that's a pretty cool message, done in a bizarre way, but a cool message nonetheless. Next up, we have Just Apathy, which, that's a title. Let's dive into this one.
I'm too much or not enough. Maybe everyone else is messed up. Well, anyway,
You know, if this was auto-tuned with very sharp pitch changes, this would be a 2020 song.
Something better. I'm the one that wouldn't let her. Now I'm back and forth. I get bored when she's no perfect fine. Cause it's one thing or another. I don't even know why I bother. One thing just tears her down. Cause it's one thing or another. I don't even know why I bother. Something I just can't get around.
Very cardiac movement on those chords.
That you've been had, but not by me. We're just kids. Don't worry about this. My course is run.
The more staccato guitar work, also emblematic of the time.
I feel bad, and I should. I made her sad, and I knew it would. Cause it's one thing or another. I don't even know why I bother. One thing just tears her down. Cause it's one thing or another. I don't even know why I bother. Something I just can't get around. I need to learn to wait in turn. Cause now I
Okay,
just
Avril
step
Lavigne.
blindly. And I'm only happy when I can close my eyes and I just dive in and forget about acting.
I am nostalgic for tracks like this, though. I like this. Okay, yep. That should be it.
Cause it's one thing or another.
Oh, it's so tropey that it isn't funny. Or it is funny that it's so... I don't know, dude.
Cause it's one thing or another. I don't even know why I bother. Something I just
And then their
can't
little
get
twist of
around.
turning it into musical theater,
But still I
wrapping
know
up on a
you won't
piano,
let
which
me
they really
down.
like to do. Oh, cool. Just okay. All right. No analysis for that track really in particular. It's a pop rock kind of ballad, very light, very emotional. Saw these a dime a dozen back in the day. Even the tropes, man, the little staccato finger picked guitar line over here, dun dun dun, dun 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 dun, dun dun dun, like that was all over the place. The guitar solo that is only a quarter as long as honestly it should be. It wraps up by the time it's already started. I had that one called out. Everything in here, dude, it's just like everything else that came out in 2005. Although I'd say it might have been even at the tail end of it. This would have been more popular in like 03, 04. This was definitely seeing the end of some of these trends as they were tapering off because they were so popular. It was over saturated of stuff like this. And that's what makes it comical, but also now at least nostalgic. But I think I have one main thing I want to bring up here that has nothing to do with that track in particular. And who writes these songs? This is something that's really standing out to me. Some of the more chaotic tracks in here, Good Day, Welcome to Tally Hall, a little bit. Banana Man has a little bit of wildness to it. These remind me of Miracle Musical. But then you get something like Greener and Be Born and Just Apathy. They just do one thing. It is tropey. It follows in the footsteps of bands who have come before them and sounds that are rather popular at the time, but they just are songs in these styles. There's no twist to it. These feel like they're written by a totally different person. And in a sense, if this is true, I guess we are about halfway through the album here, coming up on the final third. Now's a good time, I suppose. I'm going to go look at the wiki and rate your music and anything else. Try to get a little bit of background on this album. Anything that I think might help me understand it a little more than I do just from what the music's telling me. I am curious, though, if they have multiple writers, because some of these songs are just so distinct from the others. They stand out in a way that kind of feels like the Beatles, where you could certainly tell when one person wrote a song versus another because their styles were different. And you have people who really lock into the songs written by one of the Beatles and not so much the others, because they were all very different. But it also wasn't entirely collaborative. You had a leader on each of the track, the person whose vision defined it, rather than something a little bit more collaborative, like a band where you get a guy who writes a riff and the drummer's like, oh, I'll put this behind it, and then the bassist is like, oh, I got this bass riff, and now you got a song. It was a very collaborative effort to get to this verse, whereas with the Beatles, at least the way I understand it, someone was like, this is the song I want to write, these are the ideas I have in mind. Maybe they'll take some criticisms, some feedback on it. Maybe the other members of the band, or maybe even an engineer or something, might help craft it, but it's like 70% their vision. There's going to be some stuff they don't bend on at all, and it gave the songs identities almost. You can tell who was the mastermind or the leader behind that specific track. And I'm kind of getting that feeling here too. And I think it's no surprise that despite having less to say about the more straightforward tracks like Just Apathy or Be Born or Greener, these are the ones that are connecting with me the most. The other ones are just chaotic. They're wild. And, I don't know that I would come back to any of these. I do think that, especially in the situation of like Just Apathy, there are better songs who have done this thing just better. It connected with me more, or the hook is a little more catchy, or maybe there's more harmony to it, or whatever. These feel like iterative tracks within this genre, within the genre that they are. But I am enjoying them more. They put a smile on my face. There's a warmth I feel inside. Granted, 70% of that's nostalgia. I'm not going to lie about that. But I am enjoying them more than the entropy-riddled tracks that permeate the rest of this album with wild changes that don't really tell me much of anything other than we can smash a lot of things together, and we're really good at understanding genres, deconstructing them, and building up our own takes on them and playing the instruments to do them, which again is incredibly impressive to hear the variety on this done to the level that it is. It's just that variety doesn't always click with me. Let me hit some lyrics on this and we'll push into the next track, which I think is the longest on the album. Yeah, it's almost 5 minutes long. Oh, well, Tally Hall was 5:10. Just Apathy details the person who is in and out of relationships left and right, and they seem to be the one who always end up causing the relationship to fail. Maybe they even leave before the relationship is over. Sometimes they might even purposefully destroy the relationship. It talks about someone who constantly waits for the next person but gets bored when they find out that they are not perfect, always nitpicking at one little thing. The chorus states, one thing just tears her down. It's always just one thing or another. I don't even know why I bother. This idea that they fixate on one imperfection, which no one's human, so this is going to be a problem they have in every relationship. Verses 2 and 3 primarily, there's no third. Verse 2 primarily talks about how this person has no problem just moving on to the next thing that catches their fancy. And this may just be the concept of like puppy love in general, where the issues of relationship generally don't show up within the first 3 dates as long as there's no red flags. It's something that you're going to figure out further down the road as someone becomes more comfortable around you and you get to see a less curated version of themselves, more of a true form of who they are. And this especially happens once you have moved in with someone. And I think that's what this is mostly about, that when the relationship is still young, both people are still showing off their best selves, trying to minimize the less palatable elements of themselves. And let's face it, we all have parts of ourselves that aren't glamorous. And as it gets to a point when they begin to open up and let the person in, they see one thing they don't like, focus in on it, and end up leaving the relationship, ending the relationship, whatever, because the other person isn't perfect. The end of the track simply states that the next person is on the horizon and they're eagerly awaiting getting into that relationship, hoping that the next one will be perfect, or maybe even unaware that they're in this cycle themselves. Here's the thing. I think lyrically I'm enjoying the tracks that are musically wild, while musically I'm enjoying the tracks that are lyrically boring. And I think it's also because these lyrical boring tracks also tend to focus on relationships, and the stories themselves are a bit vapid, very surface level relationship stories, and they're just not really clicking with me too much. They feel very youthful, if you will. Teenagers, young 20-somethings, relationships are so important, this kind of deal. And I'm just, I don't know, dude. When I was that age, I loved songs like this, man. They spoke to me, right? The inner romantic. As I've gotten older, I've just found that general breakup songs and basic love songs, they're not too interesting to me. And that's kind of what we have here. Very standard track lyrically that doesn't say too much, but does present a story. All right. Next up, we have Spring and a Storm. Let's kick it.
One time I tried to sing
about spring and the storm, but you know how it goes. Blah 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 blah. All along. Won't you please stop complaining?
I like the harmonies.
Playing a song.
The filtered drums are an interesting choice. I'm sure they'll come in full force soon.
All the rain comes down the same. Falling to
Or maybe not.
from where it came. On the ground and back around up into the sky. I wish you could have heard the music when the clouds cloud overhead. I finally felt enthusiastic. I finally felt alive. Blah 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 blah. So you said, would it please you to listen to thunder instead? Man, the rain came down that day, and it drained my soul away. And I wondered why I even bothered to try.
Okay. I think it's because of the compressed vocals on that last section. This could have been on Miracle Musical.
Mr. Moon, tell us about the sky.
The sky is deep and dark and eternally high.
Many people think that's where you go when you die.
Do you?
Well, I think you return to obscure, or wherever you were before you were. But I won't let you lose yourself in the rain.
We have so much left to sing. There's a storm for every spring. All you see and you
I know why this sounds familiar to me now. It's a very conservative drum kit. Just end a song without a bit of a show tunes finale. Challenge impossible. I guess this isn't show tunesy. That vocal, the final vocal bit was though. This is an interesting track. First of all, we have a little bit of a harmonic departure here. Kind of brings in something a little psychedelic, primarily on the piano line throughout this track. It is still pop rock at its heart, but I think that this introduced something that is distinctly what I would call the Beatles style of pop rock. Just a little bit of a psychedelic edge that probably wasn't even called psychedelic at the time. Something that, psychedelic rock and the psychedelic genre as a whole would probably take off with a decade later. But a strong element of the identity of this track, it presents something light and bouncy, but also ephemeral, something that can't quite be grasped. There's also a looseness to the harmonic structure that doesn't necessarily dictate a general curvature of rest into tension back to rest. It does have a cyclicality to it, it's just not quite that defined. I have a tough time reading it, which is interesting. But then we also have the drum kit in here that I had mentioned is very conservative, very restrained. As far as I can tell, there is a crash, a bass kick, and a snare. I don't think I heard much in the way of hi-hat in here. It might have been in there a couple of times, but predominantly towards the last half of the track, the only cymbal I hear is the crash. And the snare is way overused. It makes up like 90% of the drum fills, of the drum patterns. There's so much snare at the end of this track, which is interesting because the snare is easily the most aggressive part of the kit alongside splashes and crash cymbals, just because those are very loud sounds. Toms are grounded and muted. The bass kick has a warmth to it. You can make it punchy, but bass kick isn't always like that. Hi-hat is just light. It's very light sound, but the snare is often vocalized as a ka sound, a very aggressive K sound, and often described as a crack. It is an aggressive part of the kit, and as laid back as this track is, the snare is all over the place in the back half, providing a bit of a tension there. For a track that, to me at least, feels like it should be rather light, easygoing, probably a lot of light cymbal work, playing around on the rims of cymbals, particularly using the hi-hat, which isn't present at all here. Very light tom work and some bass kicks. We don't really get any of that. We get snare and a lot of it. Very interesting decision there. So I don't have a read on this track. Spring in a Storm. Maybe that's what it's about. The lightness, the youthfulness of springtime. You think of children rolling down hills and going out to playgrounds and stuff, and people having picnics and going to the beach, and sun, rebirth, bringing the green back to nature, all of those things, animals leaving hibernation. And then you have a storm, which is loud and abrasive, the thunder and the wind and all of this. Maybe that's what they're going for. I don't 100% know. I hear these patterns, but as is fairly consistent with this album, I don't know how to interpret them. But I mentioned that this track sounded familiar, and I couldn't place it, and about halfway through it clicked for me. And I think part of it is the vocal delivery, but it's also the production on the vocals. It's the general slightly psychedelic pop rock sound in here that feels like a modern pop rock sound. Maybe what Beatles would have made if they wanted to make that same general idea that they had on some of their original works, but in a modern framework with modern instrumentation and production. And, it kind of clicked with me that we already had that once in our life. And it was actually a few years after this, I believe. Panic at the Disco released their sophomore album, I think at the tail end of the 2000s, called Pretty. Odd. And the way that I've always described it is, what if Panic at the Disco made a Beatles album? It feels incredibly informed by a lot of the sounds of the Beatles, and while it is distinctly a poppy alternative rock album, when you compare it to other sounds of today, it certainly doesn't feel like it came out of the 60s. You can feel a lot of the melodic devices, harmonic devices, lyrical themes, and even harmonies, chord progressions are heavily informed by the Beatles. it is, as far as I've ever described it to people, is what if the Beatles made an album in the late 2000s, with, you know, still keeping that general sound of making pop rock, just not 50s or 60s pop rock. We're talking about 2000s pop rock. And that's exactly what this track reminded me of, which is kind of wild. I don't know how many times I'm going to tie this album to the Beatles in some way, shape, or form, but they're making those parallels for me, and I guess that's kind of cool. Maybe, I don't know. The Beatles for me are very hit and miss, and I think part of that is because of, you know, certain Beatles leading certain songs. That is true for this album, also, by the way. You see, Greener, Be Born, and Just Apathy, my 3 favorite tracks on the album, also the 3 simplest ones, were all written by Rob Cantor. He only actually has one more. We're going to be listening to it in a couple of tracks. It's 11, called Haiku. Green Day. Good Day and Taken for a Ride, the 2 that I've talked about being the most kind of eclectic, were written by Horowitz. First name, Andrew Horowitz. That's the keyboardist and percussionist. One of the percussionists. Anyways, everybody does percussion? There's a lot of percussion players on this. And we'll see a couple more from Horowitz. Actually, the next one, To Love, and then track 12's The Whole World and You, were written by Horowitz. And then we have Joe Hawley. And he did Welcome to Tally Hall. He did The Bidding. He did Banana Man. He did Spring in a Storm. These are the tracks that haven't really clicked with me pretty consistently across the board. Now, I think it's interesting that I'm enjoying all of Rob Cantor's work because I do enjoy his solo stuff too. Now, granted, I haven't heard a lot of it, but for a while I did follow his YouTube channel and checked out some of his stuff. Him and I have a similar wavelength in musical tastes, I suppose. I didn't quite make this connection, but I do think that it's not a surprise that Horowitz ended up doing Good Day and Taken for a Ride, as they are also kind of distinctive on this album within a style that deviates from Hawley's and Rob's. Unfortunately, I have spoiled myself with the next few tracks, and I'm trying not to let my biases color anything, but I am thinking I'm going to have a bit of an issue with the next track, given that it is Horowitz and his works have been the most divisive for me, being that they are a bit more eclectic. And we only have one more Rob Cantor track, and I'm kind of expecting the rest of this album doesn't quite click for me as much, except for that one song left. But again, I'm going to try to go in with an open mind about all of this. But yeah, another parallel to the Beatles, I suppose. Let me hit some lyrics for this. This track is fairly nonsensical. Verses 1 and 2 are about a storm. The first verse talks about a storm coming and the narrator wanting to make a song about it, but you know how that goes. Blah, 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 blah. So, instead, I'm just going to say I'm playing a song. The second one says, I wish you could have heard the music when the clouds growled overhead. I finally felt enthusiastic. I felt alive. Blah, 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 blah. So you said, would it please you to listen to thunder instead? I don't know how to interpret this. The first idea could be speaking about an ephemerality of nature in general and the inability to accurately represent that in anything we can do, whether that is a description of it. You can't describe to someone what being in the rain feels like. You can tell them about drops of water that fall on you, or the crack of lightning, the blindingness of it, and how it lights up the sky, and also the sound of it, but no one can experience that. No one gets it until they are in the the storm, feeling the water on them, and seeing and hearing the lightning and thunder. So I kind of get that from the beginning, that no matter what you sing about, no matter what your song ends up being about, you're not going to capture the essence of the storm. I'm not too sure about verse 2, though. There was someone else alongside them, and they said you should have heard the music while the storm was going. And they said, well, why don't we listen to thunder instead? And maybe this ties back to that in a weird way. Maybe it stopped playing, listen to nature. But if so, what's the message here? What is this song trying to say? And then we have some children talking to the moon, and the moon says that the sky is really high, and people sometimes think that that's where you go when you die. And the kids asked the moon if he thought that too, and he said, I think you go somewhere else. And I don't really know where that is, but it could be somewhere obscure. It could be where we all were before. But I won't let you lose yourself in the rain, is how the moon ends the conversation. The outro says silent explosive and silent explosive and silent explosive and silent explosive creates until nothing is left to create, and the universe bursts with an overworked thigh, and pretend to recrown the creation and sing the same thing till the clouds start to cry, and then over and over again, and then over and over and never again. Part of me wants to interpret all of this in the context of creative lightning. When you have that spark and you just want to make something, you have this deluge of information, whether it is music or painting or words for a novel or poetry or whatever, and you just get that muse, and it's like electricity through your body, like a spark. The outro kind of leans into that, but I don't know about the first two verses, and the bridge is bonkers. It has nothing to do with anything else. Unless the verses are about creative block. I feel like I'm really grasping at straws there, and I have no way of bringing the bridge into that. The best read on the bridge is that this person is trying to make something. They keep running into these roadblocks, and nothing they're making ever makes sense, and then they contemplate death. That's the only way I can pair any of this together. And maybe, knowing Tally Hall, that might be it right there. But that feels like quite a bit of an abstraction from what the lyrics are stating. All right, to love. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Maybe it's supposed to be to love, but the love has been loved, but two is TWO, a number of loves here. I don't know. Like pitch distorted, so we're getting into grunge now, alternative rock.
Two girls I like a lot.
In fact, that is another song, right?
Sure if they know how my love began to grow. It took a lot of time.
I've heard this, the bass line and the vocal melody before.
I drew a mural of
dude, this is just another song. What is this?
To love, and where my heart resides is with two girls with great eyes. If they just gave me a chance, I'd show them what they want and teach them what they got. I'd tickle each and every one of their fancies, and I'd take the key to my heart and open it and let the love shine through. Mary Kate and Ashley, I hope you understand that I love you a lot and I wanna be your man. And I think that it'd be totally cool if I hung around your apartments and enrolled school. Mary Kate! I saw you on TV. You dressed up like a bee. Reminds me of the time. How it's gone and it's gone and it's gone. It's sadness every day that.
What is this slightly out of tune surf rock thing on these guitars?
I really wanna hold you both tight and tell you you're mine, but instead I sing Mary Kate and Ashley. I hope you understand that I love you a lot and I wanna be your man. And I think that it'd be totally cool if I hung around your apartments and enrolled in your school.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey, I'm calling from Tally
Say that
Hall.
again, slowly.
What? Hello?
Hello?
Hey, I'm calling from Tally Hall.
Mary Kate and Ashley, I hope you understand that I love you a lot and I wanna be your man. And I think that it'd be totally cool if I hung around your apartments and enrolled in your school. I know that life without you and you would be sad, and I know it'd be bad. Mary Kate and Ashley, I hope you understand that your loveliness blossomed and I wanna hold your hands. And I think that it'd be totally cool if I hung around your apartments and enrolled in your school. Mary Kate and Ashley, I hope you understand that I love you a lot and I wanna be your man. And I think that it'd be totally cool if I hung around your apartments and enrolled in your school. Mary Kate and Ashley, I hope you understand that I love you a lot and I wanna be your man. And I think that it'd be totally cool if I hung around your apartments and enrolled in your school. Mary Kate and Ashley, I hope you understand that I love you.
More cohesive than I expected from Horowitz. All right. Something I haven't really brought up too much on this album because it is subjective and I don't know if it's really worth diving into, but after that track, I can't ignore it. A lot of the stuff on here is a little cringe. Now, honestly, I'm a big fan of cringe. I'm a cringy dude myself. I'm not even going to lie. One of the things I loved about existing in a pre-social media, cameras everywhere childhood was that we could be cringy. We could make stupid things and they wouldn't be immortalized. We could do really dumb things with our friends and it would always be an inside joke for us, not something posted to the internet for all of time to remember us do this really cringy thing. I think cringe is good. Cringe does not work well on large scale, though. I think it has a scalability issue. And so I'm kind of glad that this album exists. There's some stuff on here. Honestly, Welcome to Tally Hall is a cringy track. Banana Man is a cringy track. And now To Love, not musically cringy, although I think the other two were. This one's more lyrically cringy. I think it's a good thing. I say the word cringe and I describe it this way as endearingly as I can. I think it's good to do stuff that isn't perfect, that isn't designed to be taken seriously. And sometimes that means putting yourself out there and doing something silly. And sometimes I think that's what cringe means. A track like this, I put in the same conversation as tracks like Wayne Gretzky by Goldfinger. It's been a long time since I heard that song. I might have the wrong, that might not be the band name. But it's a song all about how Wayne Gretzky is awesome, one of the greatest hockey players of all time. And it slowly devolves as the vocalist begins to want to do things with Wayne Gretzky. They have, it's more than just an admiration for the man. There's some attraction there, maybe even some lust. And so it starts off as kind of a silly track and veers into the realm of cringe. And honestly, I love stuff like that as a teenager, the comedy of it. And I think if I heard this as a teenager, I probably would have laughed through most of it because it's honestly sort of ridiculous. I don't know if it's supposed to be taken at face value. Maybe the lyricist of this really does have a crush on the Olsen twins, and this was their confessing to that to the world. But maybe it is just completely tongue-in-cheek, just a fun little song. What if we had a crush on Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen? Well, let's write a song as if we did. I don't think that at the end it really matters whether this is wholeheartedly something someone believes or if it's just a funny song to make. It still ends up being a fun, silly track. And like I said, if I was younger, I probably would have giggled throughout the song. Here, kind of like just Apathy, it's just kind of bouncing off of me. It never really hits. Musically, it is very typical pop punk, and I will tell you that verse is ripped straight from something. I don't know what it is. And of course, it's not a lot going on there. There is a very minimal drum part, a bass line that focuses on like 3 notes, and the vocal melody. So being that it's so minimal, that might be why it feels so familiar to something else that was minimal, because there's not a lot to pair there. There's going to be an easy case for overlap. But dude, the more I listened to it, the more I felt like I had heard that same exact thing before. So once again, Tally Hall, though, replicating the sounds of a genre, wearing their influences on their sleeve, not necessarily inventing anything new, but just doing something that's already been done very well. And I don't really have a lot to add to that. The chorus lightens things up a little bit, moves into more of a poppier realm, a more rock realm away from the punky side. The only thing that I think is awkward in here is the 2 guitars on the side that kind of have like a distorted, dissonant surf rock thing going on. I don't know what's going on with that. It's bizarre. It doesn't match the energy of the song. It has heavy harmonic tension in it, which is unlike anything else in this album. It's a bizarre choice, but saying Tally Hall did something strange in a track, yeah, that's just accurate. I don't have to tell you what track it is. You're just like, yeah, they do. That's something that's very consistent with them. This song does have 2 interludes. We have a verse and a chorus, and then a bridge that's just a mimicking of a phone call, presumably to the agent of the Olsen twins. And then another bridge where we bring the energy down and bring in some piano because they simply can't get away from ambient piano sections in their music. And then we're back to, the pop rock chorus. Not a lot to add to that, though I will say I'm kind of getting a little annoyed with these little diversions here. Maybe if there was something different. The phone call thing was just something of the time. Again, I feel like hearing people on the phone was something I heard a lot in pop music in the 2000s. I don't know if it's because, cell phones are becoming a bit more popular and mainstream. And so it was more frequent that people would be on phones, whereas when it was at your house, usually weren't on phones too often. I have no idea why, but yeah, there's a lot of songs where you'll hear, the acting of being on a phone call in the middle of a song. And maybe this was just leaning into that too. It doesn't add anything here. He gets shut down and I don't know. And then to have more of a proper bridge anyways later just made the song feel like it was doing this start and stop thing, and having to hear the chorus 4 times absolutely did not have any benefit to the song. Maybe it's just because I'm kind of reaching the end of my rope with this album. I'm finding it to be, again, like I mentioned earlier, interesting in spurts. I think if you give me any of these songs as single song reactions, I'm going to have a good time with it. But there's just not enough substance here for an entire dedicated album review to try to break down all of this intricately with analysis, when honestly most of this is iterative pop music that isn't heavily layered. There are a couple of tracks that have interesting things to them because they're a bit experimental, diving between a lot of ideas and mixing and matching things. But as we get further into it, a lot of the tracks are very straightforward. And the few times that they do deviate from the form to do something different, it is nonsensical with no ties to anything else they've done. So there's not much I can read into it other than Tally Hall doing weird stuff, right? So I don't know. I'm definitely getting a bit done with this album. It's a fun one. I think it's a good casual album. You just listen to it with your brain turned off a little bit, hum along to the catchy rhythms. It's not real great for constant active attention. I may just turn my brain off and listen to the last 6 minutes or so straight through and just see if I enjoy that. I don't know if anyone would be interested in that. I know y'all come here for the analysis. I just don't know that I have a lot for this. Lyrics. I don't know why we broke for lyrics. I picked up most of this from the song itself. The chorus says, Mary-Kate and Ashley, I hope you understand that I think it'd be real cool. I want to be your man, and I wish I could hang around your apartment and enroll in your school. And yeah, that's about it. There's a few variations towards the end of the track as we go through the chorus a couple of times, but generally the idea is the same. Here's where it gets a little... the bridge, where we bring the energy down, the second bridge, not the first one with the phone call, says, I know life without you and you would be sad, because there's two of them, Mary-Kate and Ashley. And I know that it'd be bad. The piano part isn't too complex here. It has brought the energy down, and that's all that this says. Life would be sad and bad. These are just terrible lyrics. And then we come back to the chorus again. That whole bridge should be removed. Not great. But the whole idea of hanging around the apartment and rolling into school, and then the outro says, once you learn to love me, life will be all right. And it says that over and over and over. Again, I think this is supposed to be played for laughs. Nothing in here is really serious. Everything is comical. I mean, even setting it up, he says, I have this thing. It's probably a fling. Two girls I like. But I'm not sure if they know how much my love began to grow. And then the second one talks about how, he has so much love for them and they have pretty eyes. And if they just give him a chance, they'd see all that he's got to offer. And then the chorus kicks in with Mary-Kate and Ashley. You get to hear who the two people are. And of course, they're celebrities. And that's the comedy of it all. Verse 3 dips into a melancholic area, though. It says, I saw you on TV and you dressed up like a bee. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen were child actors. I don't know if the whole dressing up as a bee ties to this, but they were really big in Full House as a sitcom, and they did stuff like, I think, Parent Trap together. I know they did some movie, I don't know if it was called Parent Trap, where they were kids from different families, but they swapped places, and it caused the parents to meet, and hijinks ensued and all that stuff. They were actors, though. So this is probably talking about that. It says, it reminds me of the time and how it's gone. It saddens every day that passes. I think this is interesting to look back at, or even to just look at celebrities now, and to look at them and be like, wow, the last time I saw you was in a film from 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. You've grown up, which means I've grown up. And that's when you realize how much time's passed. And I think this kind of ties into that a little bit. I don't know if that's what they were really going for, because it's sort of a blink and you'll miss it theme, because the rest of it goes back into the comedy of having a crush on these celebrities. But for a moment, there's almost a recollection of the passing of time and how we can see that through other people. people who we don't see all the time. Because when you see your family all the time, even if there's children in your family, you see their constant growth, right? It isn't quite as shocking as seeing somebody when they're 7 and then seeing them when they're 14, maybe because you just haven't seen any of the works that they've been in, or if it's a friend, you just haven't gotten together in years, or they moved and you're going to visit them, and their kid is so much older now that this time that you're seeing them, something like that. It's the passing of time that really shakes you, and that can certainly happen in the case of celebrities like this. But it could happen with anybody in the public space. I mean, even a YouTuber. You watched a YouTuber, 10 years ago or something, and you just kind of fell off the wagon. You pick up one of their videos today, and you're like, dude, they look older. They grew up. Doesn't even have to necessarily be a kid. Although, kids to teenagers to adults, these are very big developmental gaps. It's really easy to see changes there. But even, watching a YouTuber from years ago, and they've got a little bit of gray in their beard now or something, and you're like, dang, dude, time. And I think it's interesting that this is brought up here. It's not a focal point at all in the lyrics, but it is a moment of heavy-handedness, of bringing the energy down. The more I think about it, probably isn't intentional at all. Sort of a throwaway line here, but I keep coming back to it. To me, it's an interesting moment of reflection in a rather comical, lighthearted track. I can't seem to forget it. All right. We really only have 2 more tracks ahead of us. Haiku is 3 minutes long. Ruler of Everything is almost 4. Everything in between is sub 2. They're going to go by real quick. I'm going to play this one by ear, kind of see how the songs treat me. We may end up just, like I said, playing the next 5 tracks all back to back, as it's really only 10 minutes of music. We'll see how it goes. Next one's called Haiku.
I have been trying to write a haiku for you.
Ooh.
Some things I just can't do. Maybe you're beyond ancient Asian poetry.
The talking in the background is interesting, but
have been trying to get this haiku
Jason Mraz,
just right.
is that who popularized this kind of sounds? Well, not this anymore.
Maybe this poem was lost in the sauce we spilled that never got refilled. I've never thought much of formulaic verse anyway, and rhymes are not my forte. I have been trying to get this haiku just right all night for you. Alright, I'm through. I'm trying not to try too hard, but you're hard to write down right. So I pen these
I like the bells, very light.
at haikus for you tonight. La da dee diddum, la da da dum do diddle. Dum do la dee do. There, that's sufficient. I wrote a haiku for you. Well, I tried at least, and that's not so bad. I'm working here, can that be set free?
Maybe?
I'm trying not to try too hard, but you're hard to write down right. So I I pen these tried attempts at haikus for you tonight.
The reversed bells are...
Words don't work like Webster says. They trip me up all night. I'm just trying to write for you, but you're hard to write down right.
Sound of waves at the end. Not much to add to that. Very straightforward poppy track. I think the lyrics are going to be interesting on that one.
There's lots of pretty people here sharing sultries and passing letters, and there's lots of questions answered and metaphysical, astronomical songs, words printed on papers that seem too mystical. It's so magical. People that dance and compute that no one's better than you. La la la, la la la, la la la, la la la. There's kings in distant cities who rule their persons and make them happy, and we won't forget about the servitory, congratulatory. Even the animals know that something's brewing and they're all cooing. Cause in the end I'd like to say no one's better than you. I hope you're happy now I've revealed the truth. I've even written this whole song about you, and not about me, and not about me. Please don't just laugh and clap right now, this is serious, I'm not delirious.
The group vocals is a fun choice.
Just to let you know who should run the show, cause we all know these are the facts, nothing to retract, nothing too abstract. Concluding in the song I'll say no one's better than you, no one's better than you, no one's better than you.
Gotta go for the big ending. All right, not a lot to add to these. Very straightforward. Haiku is a track. In the, again, the visual idea of a band playing in front of a live audience, maybe because of the low hummed whispers rather than loud yelling, we're probably talking about something a bit more classier, like a little lounge area. Some light jazz could be playing here. Little conversations happening, wine glasses, steak meals, dresses and suits. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting here. Although the group vocals at the end tell a little bit of a different story, something a bit more casual. I don't know, the songs slip between ideas like a fever dream anyways, and maybe this is just one of those. Most of this track, though, is very light pop rock that starts off kind of in a Jason Mraz idea, very light guitar work. Though I think Jason Mraz typically works with electronic sounds. Either way, what's being played, the staccato muted lines on the guitar match what I expect Jason Mraz. The higher pitched vocals, very light and effeminate male vocals come through. It's just a very light song overall. We do eventually get harmonized vocals. I love that. The song expands a little bit, moves a little into a more rock sound while keeping the pop ideas, and it is generally catchy throughout. There's some cool rhyming going on throughout and a focus on rhythm, which I guess is based on the idea of haiku. I'm going to be counting syllables when I hit the lyrics. We're going to see what's going on there. The Whole World and You is a very straightforward track that is incredibly catchy. And it starts and ends pretty much the same way. I'm not sure what's going on in there in particular. It's jazzy, got a little bit of that New Orleans vibe to it. We got a lot of sass coming out of the brass, loving that. It's very bouncy, very fun. It's a nice strong group vibe in there. It doesn't change much though, which I think is interesting. Haiku evolved more than this one did, and Haiku, I believe, was the other Rob Cantor track, which consistently his works have been the focused ones on here. So that's an interesting change to see. But Like I said, some straightforward jazzy rock stuff right here. Lots of brass, lots of bounciness, lots of cool syncopation going on. Straightforward track, though. Let's hit some lyrics. Haiku is a track about our narrator wanting to be a cool romantic guy who can write poetry for someone else and chooses to use the haiku format. Like I mentioned earlier, I'd be counting syllables. Here the haiku format is 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. It's a 3-line poem, and every verse is formed of 6 lines. If you break them up, you get 2 groups of 3, and we do in fact have 5, 7, 6. 5, 7, 6. So we do have 2 haikus in each verse, and well, they're not perfect haikus. There's always 1 extra syllable at the end of them. Throughout these failed haikus, the story is about actually not being able to write haikus very well and kind of having difficulty writing poetry in general because the person that they're writing for, they're overthinking it. He confesses that I pen these trite attempts at haikus for you tonight, but you're hard to write down right, and I'm trying not to try too hard. He's basically trying to force this persona of being a romantic, but not trying to make it look forced. The conundrum there of not really being someone who can write pretty poetry, but wanting to be someone who can write pretty poetry. And running out of ideas to say anything meaningful through these failed attempts. In fact, at one point, he does write a solid haiku following the proper syllabic pattern. It is la da dee diddum, la da da doom do ditto, dum do la dee do, which does follow the 5-7-5 and immediately says there, that's sufficient, I wrote a haiku for you. Well, at least I tried, and that's not so bad. He finally gets the haiku format down, but it is sort of a meaningless poem. It is just phonetic sounds. Never quite able to get it all done together. That's what this whole song is. It's a big comedy thing. I feel like this album has done this pretty well to a point in several of the songs of not necessarily being comedic skits, but having comedic elements to their music. In a lot of ways, for some reason, this isn't like a perfect parallel, but I can see parts of the comedy here and what the setups are and what the punchlines end up being replicated in a comedy group that I think came out around the same time, maybe a little bit after, called The Whitest Kids You Know. While I will say that they tend to be a bit edgier with their jokes themselves, the concepts that they come up with, I don't know, I see some parallels between them. Though I don't think Whitest Kids You Know ever did musical ideas. Regardless, it's a track like Haiku, or what was another one that I thought would have been really well? Oh, actually, Two Of would have absolutely killed on YouTube if they had released them a few years down the line. Simply because of the comedic nature of the lyrics and the featuring the general sound of the time. I think people would have really gravitated to them and they would have been shared a lot. The lyrics to The Whole World and You appear to be some sarcastic jab at someone else. Verse 2 really solidifies it. It says there's kings in distant cities who rule their persons and make them happy, and we won't forget about all the servicesory, congratulatory. Even the animals know that something's brewing and they're all cooing, 'cause in the end, I'd like to say, no one's better than you. Now, I think when you just kind of read that final line, it seems like they're praising the other person, but they're not. If you go back and listen to the track, there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, sarcasm being snuck in there. And I think that we also are comparing this to kings who rule persons and make them happy. There's certainly people who are doing good things, although I think we could have chosen a different example than a king. He's saying that, there's important people in the world, but no one's better than you. Obviously. The bridge says, I hope you're happy now that I've revealed the truth. I've even written this whole song about you and not about me. And not about me. The repetition there really leans into the fact that this song is about the narrator. In a sense. You see, the second time it's stated, it's certainly dripping with sarcasm. The more that you read through this, you realize he never actually says anything about this other person. Verse 1 is about sitting in a room with a lot of people, maybe it's a party of some sort, and, everyone that's here, none of them are better than you. We don't actually hear about the you. We don't get to hear anything that makes them great. It's focusing on everyone else. Verse 2 talks about other people, talks about animals, but none of them are better than you. Even the bridge, he says, I hope you're happy now that I've written a song only about you. But once again, nothing about this other person has been mentioned at all. And the repetition of this certainly wasn't about me. Not about me. Not about me. Just leans into the fact that it really is a song about this person's relationship to the other person and how they're not really too fond of them in a way. The end of this track, final verse says, please don't just laugh and clap right now. This is serious. I've waited very patiently just to let you know who should run the show, because we all know that these are the facts. And concluding in this song, I'll say, no one's better than you. No one is better than you. No one's better than you. And it is stated 3 times, each one getting more biting. It is, once again, a bit of a comical song here. The punchline is, of course, that when you hear it at the beginning, maybe you think this person is just saying, you light up my life. I'm glad you're in it. I love you more than anyone. No one's better than you. But by the end of the song, it's almost impossible not to recognize that it's done facetiously. It is all done as a joke that the narrator doesn't think too much of this other person, and despite writing an entire song just about them, they've actually said nothing about them at all. Once again, reinforcing and centering the track on the narrator and how they feel about the other person who wants a song written about them. Is it a good track? That's subjective, of course. I'm not on board with it. I think it's fine. I get the joke. I get the punchline. I just don't think the execution was too strong on this one. I think Haiku was done a lot better than this one lyrically. Yeah. All right, the next track is called 13. It is the 13th track on the album. It is only 13 seconds long. We will not stop after that one to analyze it unless somehow it blows my mind in 13 seconds. Otherwise, we'll probably run this to the end, as the final track is not even 2 minutes long. Okay, yeah. That's just an introduction to this. Why even have that as its own track? I don't know.
Juno was mad, he knew he'd been had, so he shot at the sun with a gun. Shot at the sun with a gun. Shot at his wily one, only friend.
Very dreamlike.
In the gallows or the ghetto, in the town or the meadow, in the billows, even over the sun, every end of a time is another begun. You understand mechanical hands are the ruler of everything.
Is this formant shifting?
Everything. I'm the ruler of everything in the end.
Do you like how I dance? I got zirconium pants.
Consequential enough to slip you into a trance.
Do you like how I walk? Do you like how I talk?
Do you like how my
This
face
reminds
is
me of some of the vocoder stuff we saw in the opening track.
Powerful job, she criticizes me for being egocentric.
You practice your mannerisms into the wall.
If this mirror were clear, I'd be standing so tall.
Saw you stomping over clovers on the side of the
I
hill.
was observing the birds.
I've been you, I know you, your facade is a scam.
You know you're making me cry, this is the way that I am. I've been living a lie, a metamorphical scheme.
A little bit of barbershop in there.
Oh no, no, oh yeah.
Yeah, heavily layered and claustrophobic, just like the opening track. Also, I haven't brought up They Might Be Giants much since the beginning, but we've returned to a sound that I would say is in parallel to that.
You understand mechanical hands, or the ruler of everything. Ruler of everything. I'm the ruler of everything in the end.
Without looking down, gliding around like a bumbling dragon, I fly, scraping my face on the sky. Oh no, no, oh yeah.
And there's one of those eclectic tracks that kind of lose me from moment to moment. But it's also another one, probably because it is by Joe, that I could have seen on Miracle Musical too. There's a lot of sonic expression on those tracks of his that plays around with more production tricks, which we saw a lot of on Miracle Musical. And certainly separates itself from Rob's stuff on this one.
We were playing in the sand.
There's also something about Ruler of Everything that feels like it points towards the 20s, though.
You told me you fell in love with it, hadn't gone
Which Miracle Musical also had a fascination with harmonic devices from the beginning of the 1900s.
never love anew. I wondered if I could hold it and fall in love with it too. You told me to buy
This is straight up like, what, 40s?
all I wanted was you.
This is an interesting track because it doesn't seem like it belongs. Not within the album as a whole, but as an ending. Also, why does the low energy filtered audio with compression on it and the light ukulele work and waves reminds me of the end of Miracle? What was that? I'm going to rewind that a second. What was that? That was backmasked, wasn't it? I think that was in reverse. It reminds me of the end of Miracle Musical. I think that final track was Dream Suite in C major, I think is what it was called. And I may be misremembering details, but I think the vibe was kind of the same as this one. What I was talking about, though, about this track being out of place is I can see this elsewhere. And we've had a couple of tracks like this, lower energy, kind of going for a relaxed vibe. Maybe before 13, I think that could have been worked in. Ruler of Everything, though, is in conversation with the opening of the track. It is hyper maximalist. There is a ton of vocoder and vocal alterations to it. We have the pitch shifting or formant shifting that's going on with the vocals there. It feels very digital and electronic alongside the acoustic instrumentation. And there's just a lot of different sounds on it. This is all how we were introduced to this album on Good Day. And so this is a perfect way to wrap the album up, except the album doesn't get wrapped up on it. I'm a little confused about that. I don't even think Hidden in the Sand is that strong of a song. Maybe lyrically it can provide some sort of closure to this album, but musically, it sort of just is this thing, this calming ukulele song with these classic 40s. I can't even think of what the genre was called. It is something in the mid 40s. Chord progressions, and that's it. And some waves. The waves certainly have a nice end of album feeling. If we started in a more direct place and never came back to that, because we could have made a journey to a point of relaxation away from maximalism, but we cycled instead. As we got to Ruler of Everything, we were back to a hyper maximalist electronic landscape. Finding this relaxation by the beach point after that feels awkward. And like I said, if it was musically doing something interesting, I could maybe go for that, but it's just a 4-chord progression on the ukulele with some light melody on top. It's more textured, production based than compositionally based here. I'm a little confused by that. 13 shouldn't even be a track that feels like a joke, because it's just the opening 8 bars of Ruler of Everything. In fact, the exact same chords are played for Ruler of Everything to kick it off. So it's just the intro for track 14. There's no need for it to be a separate track. No one would ever listen to that on its own. Oh, geez, that's just ridiculous. Ruler of Everything, though, like I had mentioned, it returns back to the maximalist themes that we saw at the beginning of the album. Lots of ideas going on here, and it also kind of bounces off of me a little bit. It just never quite forms into a strong identity, but I think that this kind of works. There's an assumption that parts of this album, or maybe all of it, is supposed to be displays within this mechanical museum. I think the only time I really noticed a direct allusion to that would be Banana Man, because in there they had mentioned at the beginning that there's some spoken word, there's a introducing this guy and the singing crows or whatever. And if you look at the album art, that's actually one of the exhibits there. So this idea of opening with this idea of this is the museum, and, you know, walking in and seeing this band, and then Greener feels weird, but Welcome to Tally Hall is absolutely feeling like an opening room, getting ready to dive into the museum vibe. Good Day gives you the setup for everything. It's a nice opener. This feels like leaving the museum. It's the theme song-esque, or the vibes you had at the intro, the entrance, are here at the closer too. Kind of telling you that the day's over and I hope you enjoyed your stay, and it kind of, you know, wraps everything else up nicely in a bow. So while I wasn't that big of a fan of it in isolation, I think it's a perfect way to wrap the album up. It feels like we finally tied everything together somehow some way. Also, I'm just now realizing I think there's only one time any person's name was listed in here, and that was Marvin. Well, other than in Banana Man, they did name the Banana Man. But it's Marvin's Miraculous Mechanical Museum. I still wonder if, was it The Bidding? Taken for a Ride? Greener? One of them mentioned Marvin. I wonder if that is still the Marvin of the owner of this museum. I guess as a final word, this entire album feels very disjointed. It is a bit of a compilation album where everything kind of ties together thematically, but musically it is a massive smorgasbord of sounds that are all over the place, some more focused, some less focused, some wanting to be exploratory and inventive, others that want to be totally iterative and do something funny with an established sound. It never quite feels cohesive in the same way that I've complained about the Beatles albums well, I've only heard one album, but you can certainly feel, oh, you know what? I think Beach Boys was another one where you can feel that different songs have different vibes and they don't necessarily gel together for a single journey through an album. It's sort of a collection of songs the band wrote at this time and then sold them as a group, not necessarily something that needs to be understood within the context of each other. But I still think with the framing of this, I would expect more cohesion than I ended up getting. Unfortunately, at the end of something like this, there's always going to be songs that stand out and others that don't. It's not an album where I feel like everything hits perfectly all the time. And given the wildly different sounds across it, listening experiences, biases, and the subject nature of art are going to play into this heavily, where I find it really interesting if anybody enjoys this album as a whole, where this is just a 10 out of 10, it never misses, you love every bit of it, given how much variety sonically is on here. Let's hit some lyrics for these last two. I don't think it's going to clarify anything, but then we'll wrap this video up. Despite the musical parallels with Good Day, what is this track called? Ruler of Everything has nothing to do with the Mechanical Museum, at least not on the surface. Everything here focuses on a brand new story. But I wonder if the Mechanical Museum is something more than just that, a museum of mechanical things, much as we saw in Welcome to Tally Hall when they described themselves as just, animatronics. Mechanical beings, gears and cogs and electricity that look like they're playing. Nothing more than sheer puppetry going on. That's how I interpreted this, but here we talk about the mechanical elements and gears of a clock. The chorus states that you understand mechanical hands are the ruler of everything. Time is what rules us all. The mechanical hands of the clock. It says no matter what, all of us succumb to time. Now it says this in a wild way that I don't know I would have necessarily picked up had it not been for some of the genius annotations, other people understanding some metaphors that I didn't. The entire track looks at a man named Juno. At the very beginning it says Juno was mad. He knew he had been had, so he shot at the sun with a gun, shot at the sun with a gun, shot at his wily one only friend. It's nonsensical. But the story continues to follow Juno, and he talks about how cool he is. That he walks and talks pretty cool. He has a wonderful life and a powerful job. And he practices his mannerisms so that people, enjoy his company. But he realizes that it's all a facade. He's been living a lie. All of this that makes him look cool isn't actually going to change anything about his life in the end, which I think this is a very cynical way to look about life in general, but that is what the verse appears to state. That no matter how cool your life is, you're going to meet the same fate as everyone else. The bridge says, do you hear the flibberty gibberty jibber jabber? Oh my God, I've got to get out of here. I'll have another word to sell, another story to tell, another timepiece ringing the bell. Do you hear the clock stop when you reach the end? No, you know it must be never ending. Comprehend it if you can. Comprehend it if you can, but when you try to pretend to understand, you resemble a fool, although you're only a man. So give it up and smile. Here there is an echo of the word time after it says give up and smile. It says you can't understand time, you can't understand human existence. You can attempt to have a philosophy for all of this, but the moment that you tell somebody you understand what life is about, the meaning of life, why time takes us and why that adds meaning to life, it says you resemble only a fool. You can try to comprehend all of this, but that's it. You can only try. So despite the musical parallels, thematic parallels are completely missing. This is nothing like Good Day. And while musically I find this to be a great way to wrap up the album, despite the fact that's not the direction they saw, lyrically it's an interesting place to end it. So many tracks on here are... Ooh. I was going to say so many tracks on here are about relationships, but that's not true. They are, but they're also about the me. A relationship is over and I'm sad. A relationship is over and I'm already looking towards the next one. I really want this relationship to take off, so let me show off my poor poetry skills. You want a song about you, well, I'm going to make the song about how you want to be in it. It's still about me making the song. Then we have tracks like Be Born, the importance of birth, of being, of existing. We have a track like, what was the other one? Oh, Banana Man. How much you hate your life. How terrible your desk job is and how much you look towards the weekend so that you can take bananas to escape the mundane elements of your life and find something that you enjoy. There's so much in here about me. And this final track here states that in the end, time doesn't care about you or anyone else. We're all the same. As I'm saying this, I'm immediately reminded of Death of the Author. The idea that the authorial intent of a work can still be stated, but that the artwork itself can and will say things beyond, outside, and contrary to that. That the author of a work might have intended to say one thing, but through their own experiences, biases, skill, lack of attention towards specific elements, have ended up saying something else. I wonder then if this is intentional or not. And I only wonder this. Normally I like to give benefit of the doubt. I would say that Tally Hall certainly made this an album of egotistical experiences, only to say at the end that egotism is stupid. That we should be looking to create interesting memories with everyone. To not look out for just us, but those around us too, because being more important or thinking that you're more important, of centering the world around you doesn't make any sense because you're no more important to time than any other person. But given how flippant a lot of these lyrics are, given how comical many of these tracks are, where they have a punchline to state by the end of the song, how ephemeral and momentary these tracks are musically, how self-serious it seems to take itself at some times, and comically it takes itself in sort of cringy directions and other times. I'm not too sure that the entirety of this is supposed to be read as this overarching theme. It almost seems like a byproduct of this. But this is a very stark change, and my mind is trying to figure out why. Of all of these tracks that are egotistical or self-centered or comical, why here at the end do we have something that's a bit more serious? Why do we have a song about death at the end of this playful comedic album? And that's the only thing I can come to. It's the only idea that makes any sense to me, but it also feels a little forced. I'd love to know that this is what they intended. I think that would be pretty cool and would give the album something for me to gravitate towards artistically. Please, somebody, show me an interview where somebody, Andrew or Rob or Joe, where they say, yes, this is the purpose of this. To have a series of vignettes of people who are entirely self-centered, and then a final moment to say, be more than that. Because I want to enjoy more of this, other than just calling it that fun album that does a lot of wacky stuff and reminds me of the 2000s. This makes sense. Hidden in the Sand is actually a hidden track, at least originally. Now it is track 14 on this album. But it was originally a hidden track at the end, leaving Ruler of Everything to be the proper ending, and this to be a bit of a bonus, a post-credits scene, if you will, in a post-2015's world. It is shallow-ish. There is a metaphor here, but we really only have 10 lines. Says you were playing in the sand and you found a little band. You told me you fell in love with it, hadn't gone as I had planned. When you had to bid adieu, said you'd never love anew. I wondered if I could hold it and fall in love with it too. You told me to buy a pony, but all I wanted was you. So we have two people playing together. One finds something and decides that that's all they need now, and then they leave, and it leaves our narrator alone. They were hoping maybe they could play with this other thing too, and they could have a good time together, and the other person says, no. Go get something else. A pony in this case, which seems arbitrary, but whatever. And our narrator says, but all I wanted was you. We have a little analogy of somebody who is reeling over and dealing with the grief of a lost relationship. Once again, a story much like Greener, where we have our narrator, they're with someone, that person moves away, and now they feel the distance and the loneliness of that. That's it. Certainly a hidden track, as there's not a lot of depth to it. However, it does feature something that I feel is a nice wrap up to the album, much like Ruler of Everything had a backmasked line in it, which I don't think we went over. It has a phrase that says, oh, ho, 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 he's a jackrabbit. He's jumping away. Get him. But in reverse, this was in the middle of the track, and honestly, I didn't pick it up. I only saw it in the lyrics. This also has a reversed vocal bit. This is a sample from Marvin Yagoda, the original founder and owner of Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum in Farmington Hills, Michigan. It says, wouldn't the world be better if we took nonsense seriously? And that feels like a pretty strong thesis statement to wrap this album up on. There are a lot of wacky, comedic, lighthearted ideas on this album, but as we've explored lyrically, maybe not so much musically, that usually, despite the punchlines, the comedic setups, the odd framing for all of this, there's usually a second layer to the lyrics. Something that seems nonsense on the surface actually has a deeper meaning underneath it. Now, I'm not going to say anything in here was mind-bending and, philosophically deep. A lot of this was more about creating a metaphor and framework for talking about self-centeredness, mostly. I did give these lyrics the weight of being taken seriously, as I do with all lyrics, even when we listen to wild stuff like Gong or the Beatles or Genesis. I'm trying to figure out what they're saying, even if the surface seems nonsensical. I'd like to think in some way that Tally Hall is seen somehow through this reaction and analysis here. I know it wasn't quite the revelatory take on these songs that sometimes I've had in the past with albums, where I've helped people understand what the album is doing, what it's saying, and how it's conveying that message through both the music and the lyrics. But we have done a pretty good deep dive of the lyrics on this one, and maybe even the fact that many of these songs are iterations of popular sounds of the time is in itself some sort of criticism for popular music at the time. I don't know. I don't have much insight into that. But I have tried to take this nonsensical, wild ride of an album seriously and try to figure out what it's telling me. And while sometimes I've walked away a little confused, I still think here, especially with Ruler of Everything and how it wraps up all the themes into an interesting little bow and brings the music all the way around full circle as well, I am coming away from it with a little more appreciation than I had in the middle. These are my thoughts. Tally Hall's Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this track? Let me know. Put that and anything else you'd like into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.